Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, everyone. Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dibler. Got to unmute your microphone, of course.
Hola.
Yeah, I didn't send you your reminder text tonight because the YouTube studio
it
is
wouldn't
telling
have made
us.
a difference.
Oh, no?
No.
Out of it tonight? Yeah, the YouTube studio back end is telling us that our bit rate is too low. What the fuck do they know about bit rate? Seems to be coming through okay. Everybody
It's
seems to
late.
be
We
coming
don't
through
need
okay.
no stinking bit
We don't
rate.
need no bit rate. I'm afraid of no bit rate. I don't even know what you're talking about. You know, they say bit rate's not even real. Fake news.
It's not even real. Actually, most people who had a high bit rate, they got cancer. They don't want to tell you about that.
Yeah, they haven't talked about that lately. But if you have a high bit rate, there's a correlation between high bit rate and brain cancer.
There were 16 players in the NBA who died, and the common factor is high bit rate.
Bit rate. All right, now it says excellent connection again. All right, our bit rate is back. They're coming for us. They're coming after us with their bit rate. All right, well, folks, hey, we got a great crowd in here tonight. 1,100 strong in the YouTube chat. 1,000 strong in the Rumble chat. We got the Q&A coming up after the show. Final segment of the show on Rumble tonight, plus the call-in Q&A. But right now, we want to introduce a special guest. We're welcoming her back to the show. I lost count. That's how much we've been talking to her recently, but for very good reason. She is a former city council member in Seattle and the founder of Workers Strike Back. Our friend, you all know who she is, Kshama Sawant. Kshama, welcome back.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course. Absolutely. You are very often top of list of people we want to talk to, but especially under these circumstances, since you and you alone are now responsible for every misdeed of Donald Trump's these past 4 years. And so I figured, we should have the person most responsible for the reemergence of American fascism on the show, Kshama Sawant. So how do you feel about that? No, on a serious note, what I mean, I'll start as vaguely as that. What do you think?
Well, first of all, you're right that, as usual, the Democratic Party and their whole coterie of political commentators, pundits, they are, and you guys have covered this in your recent episodes, they are going to blame everyone and everything under the sun except for the fact that they themselves are a party of the billionaire class, have completely sold out working people, have been presiding over a genocide and overall an administration of war, imperialist war, broke a railroad worker strike, but none of that is at fault. It's according to them, according to Joe Scarborough and Joy Reid and all of these spokespeople who are paid millions of dollars and have tens of millions of dollars in accumulated wealth, going around blaming working class Black people, working class Hispanic people, working class men, because apparently they are too misogynist to have voted for a woman. Joe Scarborough said, while accusing working people of getting balkanized himself, and you pointed this out in one of your recent segments, he himself is carrying out, he's expressing this whole divide and conquer strategy that both the Republicans and the Democrats, frankly, they do. Both parties of billionaires do, where they try to divide working people. And so he made this outrageous claim that Hispanics won't vote for Black people. And then Al Sharpton sat there and agreed with them. Shameful spokespeople for U.S. imperialism. And obviously, let's be clear, racism and sexism, misogyny, they are real under a system like capitalism, because it is a system that benefits from continually dividing working class people on racial, gender, and ethnic lines to prevent them from uniting in a working class fight back against the sort of the common root cause of exploitation. But that said, racism and sexism were not the reasons Kamala Harris lost. The reason she lost and the reason Donald Trump ended up winning is the deep anger of working people at the Democratic Party at the cost of living crisis, the cratering of living standards, and the obvious fact that the Democrats represent warmongering, they represent billionaires and not working people. And obviously in all of this mix is the important fact also that the Arab and Muslim American voter base, which has been for decades it's been a stronghold of the Democratic Party, that was eviscerated. At least this time around, it was eviscerated for the Democratic Party because of them being the overseers of the war and genocide in the Middle East. And so I think you can see that overall, in my view, this was mainly an expression of anger at the Democratic Party. I think we should also talk about, hopefully in the show, about there are some real illusions among working people about Donald Trump. You guys have talked about that. I think that we have to be clear that Trump is not going to be any kind of panacea. He also represents the billionaire class. But what has happened, and we cannot understate what has happened, this is quite an earthquake where it is really searing. The vote that just happened is a searing indictment of the Democratic Party, not to mention of Kamala Harris herself.
Of course, and I just want to interject one thing. You know, you mentioned all of these pundits who are blaming racism, not just racism of white people, but as, you know, racism of Latinos against blacks, of this against that. Most of these pundits, not all to be fair, but almost all of these pundits support Israel, which is far and away the most racist entity on earth, is the nation of Israel, like far and away.
Well, in order for white supremacy to really expand, it had to reach beyond white people. Now we have an expanding white supremacy that includes everybody. It's a more inclusive white supremacy, actually.
But you know, the thing is, I mean, yes, it's absolutely ludicrous for them to be claiming that working class people are being racist and misogynist while they themselves are the purveyors of these horrible ideas. But in reality, that's the other aspect of the process that's unfolded, especially since Obama, right? But even before that, especially Obama, and also before that Clinton, where there are these rhetorical differences, and there have been these rhetorical differences between the Democrats and Republicans. And so for years, the Democrats had cultivated a certain working class base of just people who did not subscribe to right-wing or reactionary ideas, did want the working class to make some gains. But what has happened is that every subsequent betrayal by the Democratic Party pushes working people more and more towards actually reactionary ideas at a time when they could actually be won over away from them. So when people say, oh, working class people are anti-immigrant, well, yes, that has been expressed in the election vote. There's no doubt about that. And we have to be sober about that. But the point is that it's not something etched in stone. Working people can be won over away from these ideas that actually end up pitting working class people of one section of society against working class people of another section and unite. But they don't. But that's precisely what the ruling class doesn't want. They don't want to unite. So what you see is both the Democrats and Republicans using these kinds of talking points to divide people.
Well, on that note, I think it's important to bring this up because the working class has now abandoned the Democratic Party. There's no two ways about that. There's no denying that at this point. The Republicans actually lost the rich vote for the first time. I mean, I should have done research to see when the last time that happened was. Certainly for the first time in my lifetime that the actual households above $100,000 in earnings per year actually voted majority Kamala. And every demographic under that, every class demographic under that, by gradations of 50,000 anyway,
it
voted
has
for Trump.
To, at the very least, be pre-FDR.
It
might be Reconstruction.
Since
it's
when?
Dramatic.
Yeah,
it's dramatic. Yes, and I think I know we'll get into this, so sorry if I'm preempting all of that, but I think that dramatic shift and really the divergence of the working class from the Democratic Party in this election, actually, in terms of next steps, we need to make that permanent because there will be enormous attempts, powerful attempts to drag people back into the Democratic Party. And that is why we have to warn people, you cannot get suckered by Bernie Sanders. I don't give a shit about his trenchant critique the day after the election, after he has spent the whole campaign season shilling for Biden and then for Harris, and suddenly he woke up the next morning
his function.
Thinking,
that's his function. They're going to send him back out there to get people to start listening to him, and he's going, and that's why you have to vote for these Democrats.
Yeah, and he says, stay tuned. I have a plan. What is your plan, Bernie Sanders? To drag people back into the Democratic Party? No,
First,
I mean, absolutely
you support
not.
Democratic candidates.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. They're going to do this whole vote blue again and again.
Well, what I want to show you here, I think this was very important. I think you got into this a little bit on the RBN stream that you were part of. But while the Democrats tanked and while working people voted for Trump as a majority this time, Progressive, left-wing, populist economic policies actually did very well in all of their ballot measures and almost entirely in deep red states. So Alaska, these are ballot measures. So these are up and down referendums. We put a policy on the ballot and people vote directly on them. Alaska Measure 1, raise the minimum wage and require paid sick leave. 56% yes. This is a state that Donald Trump won handily, voted overwhelmingly for a minimum wage increase and paid sick leave. Missouri, another deep red state, raises the minimum wage and requires paid sick leave. 57% yes. Kentucky, Amendment 2, allows public funds to go to non-public education. So basically divert public funds to private schools. That was voted down. That is a progressive win there. Overwhelmingly voted down, 64-35. Nebraska, another deep red state, requires paid sick leave. 74% in deep red Nebraska requiring paid sick leave. Nevada, this was the state that Trump also won, prohibits slavery and involuntary servitude. 60%. Wow, you'd think they'd be a little bit more unanimous in their opposition to slavery. No, ha. No, what they mean by this is basically an anti-prison labor measure, meaning that criminals shouldn't be required to work for basically slave wages. That passes 60-40. So progressive left-wing economic policies, when put up for a yes or no vote, were undefeated. Not only were they undefeated, they were undefeated mostly in deep red states, which shows you that these ideas win. Actually, left-wing economic populism wins. It wins even in very red places. So A, what do you have to say to that? And B, our friend, our viewer, I think he's a friend. He's been in touch with us enough. I hope I could say that. I hope that's not too bold of me. Roger Meadows has messaged the show. He's a ballot initiative activist. He insists this is the way to go. Hey, look, if these candidates suck, why don't we just win these policies by getting these policies on the ballot, up or down, yes or no? That seems like the way forward to me, at least in the short term, until we can run better candidates.
I think there is something to that. I think one of the concrete things we do want to discuss at the February organizing conference is some of opportunities for some concrete concrete campaigns of this kind, where we put the question of higher wages. Workers' Strike Back, for example, is calling for a $25 an hour minimum wage. We're calling for that nationally, but we have to start somewhere. So we could and should look for concrete opportunities for these kinds of campaigns, and a ballot measure is not a bad thing. I mean, it's a very, very hard thing. I don't think people should have any illusion that it's easier to do than running a candidate, in the sense that you will have the Democratic and Republican parties arming against these ballot measures, and there will be a campaign. It will be a massive fight, but yes, absolutely, we should be doing. I don't and I don't know if Roger Meadows implied this, but I'll just go ahead and say this. But I don't think that we can, and I don't think you were saying this either, Keaton. But just to be clear, I don't think the question of a new party for new anti-war working class party can be sidestepped either, which means that it doesn't mean that we can do it right now. I mean, again, I said this on RBN Live as well, that I don't think we're in a position to launch that new party right now, because it's not a question of launching it in name. It's a question of having enough working class momentum behind it. And I don't think we're there yet. We need much more mass momentum behind it. But we do want to lay the groundwork, provide the framework for what that new party should look like. So I think while we should get at the same time that we should get ready to launch some of these kinds of campaigns, including ballot measures on concrete economic issues, we should also, I think, have a real serious political discussion about what kind of new party we need, and also permanently breaking from the Democratic and Republican Party. That has to be emphasized at every step of the way, because we will see, it's not just Bernie Sanders and AOC. I mean, they're just the more high profile, but we will see all kinds of Democratic Party cheerleaders, including Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She's notorious for this kind of, stepping in and co-opting the mood. But she's not the only one. We saw Ro Khanna go on Breaking Points. I mean, it's just disgusting. All these commentators like crystal ball. They shill for Kamala Harris, but then they also criticize the genocide. They also talk in favor of working people. But then again, now they're making fun of Kamala Harris for failing. I mean, it's like you have no accountability as a political analyst. You can say whatever you want on a given day. Make sure your relations with all the powerful people are safe, are cozy, and then you come and say that, oh, we need to do this, that, and the other. So I think we have to really break from all these snake oil salesmen that are going to pop out of the woodwork saying, we are the ones who are going to lead the fight against Trump. We have to reject all of them, both the Democratic Party politicians themselves and their spokespeople, whether they're in the media or in liberal organizations. And to do all of that, we have to hammer home at every moment that we cannot put our faith in the Democratic Party. And that also concretely, just one last thing I'll say on this is that it also means that we have to look at politics from a mass movement standpoint. I mean, just to share with you, we had our national Zoom worker strike back meeting earlier today, and this was our post-election meeting. We're also going to have in-person meetings in other cities. And we, one of the refrain that kept coming up was, we need to run candidates. We need to run candidates. And a lot of people will say, well, let's just run candidates. And we're warning those of us who are in revolutionary workers and in worker strike back, we're warning that just running candidates, dozens and dozens of candidates, is not the solution. I would prefer we don't run a single candidate if it's not on the right basis, And so we should talk concretely about what that political work looks like.
No, I think you're 100% right about that, and that's why I think that the ballot measures are potentially a really good tool, because if you can get some of them on the ballot and say Workers Strike Back, Revolutionary Workers as an organization supports, say, a $15 minimum wage ballot measure drive in a state, and that wins, that's a victory that we can sort of put in our column. And I think victories beget more victories, wins beget wins. And so this is a way to perhaps start putting wins on the board without having to run candidates and win with candidates, which at this phase is extremely, extremely difficult and next to impossible to actually have happen. And the other thing I like about a ballot measure is there's no branding issue. It's not, well, yeah, sure, this candidate wants to raise the $15 minimum wage, but they said something about immigrants that I don't like, or but they're for trans sports or whatever. Like it gets all the other stuff out. It's just an up or down vote. Hey, you want higher wages or not? Yes, good. So do we. Vote for it, and then we build from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think it also has it has another advantage to it, precisely for the reasons you described, is that it will allow us to unite people, working people, on that issue, regardless of which way they voted. Whether you didn't vote at all, you voted for Jill Stein. Working class people, genuine working class people, have voted for Trump. We want to win them over on these issues. And so it's possible to build united campaigns. Just one thing, I guess one example I wanted to give from a ballot initiative that we were helping to push in 2010. I mean, it's a long while ago, but that example really stands out because it's a concrete example of how with ballot measures also, we will need the kind of political leadership that we've had in Worker Strike Back to push back against really bad ideas, meaning this was I-1098. This was a ballot initiative, Washington statewide ballot initiative to tax wealthy households in order to fund, overall social needs. Excellent ballot initiative. It was written really well and everything. But the Democratic Party led that effort, and Democratic Party adjacent people, organizations led that effort, and they absolutely refused to campaign for it in the way that it needed to be done in order to win. So in other words, we as socialists, we were recommending, I mean, this was before we had won our council position and everything. So, they weren't giving us the time of day, and they still don't do, but, we didn't have the kind of mass base that we developed through the decade on the city council. But we were urging that the campaign should be branded as the Tax the Rich campaign. And on that basis, we will get also more conservative leaning voters in Eastern Washington, which is not Seattle. I mean, not all of Washington is Seattle. There are other places in the state as well, but they are all angry, just like Seattle workers are angry at the rich, angry at how rich the state is, and there's no state income tax on the wealthy, meaning, and all of that. So tax the rich branding, I have no doubt would have won. When the ballot initiative was first launched and the first polls were done, it had like 63-65% support. But the people who ran this campaign, they just ran it into the ground because they did not want to break their relations with rich people, and all the, that's the story of the Democratic Party. And then they campaigned for 1098 as an income tax, and that opened the door for the Republicans and the right wing to go door knocking in Eastern Washington, which they did systematically, to say, well, this is an income tax, meaning today they might be taxing rich households, but tomorrow they're going to come for you. Just a complete falsehood. But they won the day, and that initiative lost. And so I'm just saying that even with ballot measures, I think we need this kind of offensive political leadership.
100%.
Yeah, well, you wound up being able to get a lot done in the city council. So, a lot of people, of course, they were working within a party. Very often people talk about after Goldwater got crushed, the seeds of what became the Reagan Revolution were planted in small elections and taking over school boards and taking over city councils, and gradually, over 16 years really, they elected Ronald Reagan. Now, obviously, that's not the movement we're interested in, but kind of similar strategy to that work for a new party. They were still working within the Republican Party. They were a renegade element of the Republican Party that eventually took it over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to start wherever we can. I would say that, and I don't disagree with you, I'm just saying that wherever we do and whatever we do, whether it's a ballot measure or we run maybe one candidate somewhere,
right,
the political basis on which we do any of this, that's important, because that will form the backbone of what will end up happening in the future. So for example, if we end up running any candidate, even if it's for school board or for a local election of any kind, it matters on what basis we run. The number of seats, yes, it'll be great if we can win many. It's not that sometimes some of the Jill Stein campaigns sometimes have said that it's not like we lack ambition to win. I mean, I find that idea bizarre, because we're the only ones who have won anything, unfortunately, for the working class, what we won in Seattle. So it's Keaton, you made this point in our live stream. It's strange for them to say, well, they're interested in winning. Yeah, well, we have proven we can win, but it's a question of how you can win. You can't win on the basis of, on a weak basis where you feel like, oh, what you need to do is be defensive and try to make agreements with all kinds of gatekeepers. No, I mean, from the get-go, we have to be very clear who's on our side, who's not. And if on that basis we come close to winning, but we don't win a particular race, that's okay. But the correct basis, correctly educating individual activists so that we start building a militant base, that's what's going to be crucial right now. And it's a really ripe moment for us to do that, to start building that militant base. Even if it's small, we need to start there, because that kind of militant, it's not only about organizing. Militant organizing is based on a solid political analysis. That political analysis, which really came from revolutionary socialists, that is completely missing. I mean, it's virtually missing. It's only a few of us who are the proponents of it. But in reality, most organizations of the left, even those who call themselves socialists, have abdicated all of these ideas. And certainly the majority of the labor leadership has in the last 40-50 years. So there's been just an evisceration of those ideas. And we have decades of that to catch up from. And so even if we start small, and which we will, we are going to be starting small, the political basis on which we do this is the main backbone.
Well, that kind of segues nicely into this, a good time to bring this up. And I know this is a little delicate because I assume the Greens are going to be involved to some extent with the conference in February. And I think we should have an open door policy and be welcoming to them. But, you mentioned when we interviewed you and Hassan on the Jimmy Dore show last week that Worker Strike Back had volunteers that had gone to Dearborn, volunteered their time away from home, traveled from all over the country to canvass for Jill Stein door to door. And that one group they didn't really see much of on the ground was the Green Party itself. And this is why, look, we took a little shit from our audience for not backing the Greens stronger earlier in the race. And part of why we were hesitant is because we really feel like working class people's time and money is precious, and we don't want them funneling it into an organization that's going to let them down. Now, the Greens obviously had a modicum of success this election in Dearborn. They got almost 8,000 votes, which is an improvement over Howie Hawkins' total of, I think, 207 last time. So it was not a catastrophic failure, but ultimately they did not come close to cracking 1% nationally, or I believe not even statewide in the state of Michigan. So how would you assess, and like I said, we're not trying to tear anybody down here. This is about constructive criticism and accountability within the movement. How would you assess the Jill Stein campaign overall and your experience working with them, those volunteers who couldn't find Green Party people anywhere when they were knocking door to door in Michigan?
Yeah, as you said, this is not about tearing down. It's about constructive criticism. And then on that, in that spirit, I would like to start by saying, actually, I mean, the bottom line is the fact that Jill Stein ran was crucial, especially after the whole Cornel West debacle, and to be honest with you, it's not that she was, I mean, I have disagreements with her, but I don't think that she was, it was in any way a sort of a self-aggrandizing thing ever. I mean, they were genuinely, Chris Hedges and I actually spoke to Jill Stein and others in New York when we were both there for the launch of the worker strike back in New York. And they were delighted at the idea of asking Cornel West to run on the Green Party ticket. Right. And it's really, really unfortunate what Cornel West ended up doing. And it's also a cautionary tale. If you have, even if it's somebody well-meaning, if they make it about, sort of their own sort of ideas and not about what's in the best interest of the working class, that can just go awry. And that's really, that's a liability for the working class movements to have that. And so it's actually important that she ran. She did show a lot of courage. I mean, she was relentlessly attacked, as we know, by the Democratic Party. Sure. I mean, almost historic, I think, or not just almost, but actually historic. The Harris campaign actually putting out ads against her. I don't believe that had happened in the past. Mostly the Green candidates were ignored.
And she put work in on the ground. She didn't run an armchair campaign. I'm not trying to say that. It's just they didn't have the organization that you would think a party with that many years under its belt might have. That's all.
Yes, no, I agree, and I'm coming to the critique. But I just also wanted to acknowledge Jason Call, her campaign manager, who's actually from Washington State. We've known him for a while, and I think he did a really good job and overall. And as I said, it was important that Jill Stein ran, but I think. We did have disagreements with them. One of them, which we have expressed, and we've discussed with them both in sit-down discussions and also openly at our rallies, that we didn't think it was productive for the campaign to continually insist that they would either win, which actually, in a way, I mean, their rationale about that was, well, everybody knows we're not going to win, but, it's a question of presenting an encouraging position. I don't necessarily agree, and that's not how we did in 2012 when we didn't win our State House campaign, which we used as a springboard for winning the 2013 City Council campaign. But okay, that's fine. I think in some ways the more problematic thing was them saying maybe we could get 5%. Well, we said you're not going to get 5%, and we don't want to get people's hopes up in a way that is not constructive. I mean, it's a question of, it's a fine balance. How do you run a campaign that really excites and energizes people, but on the basis that they're fully aware what is likely to happen? So we, for our outlook is, well, if we say we're going to get 1% or less, and then we get more than that, well, who's going to complain? Nobody's going to point fingers and say, Kshama, you said we were going to get 1%, but we got 3%. No, people will celebrate if we got 3%. It's a question of preparing people mentally for what this campaign is about, why this should be done nonetheless, and then what are the next steps after that. And it's not that they disagree with us about the next steps in any way. I think Jill Stein is coming to speak in the February conference. I know Jason Call will be there. I know many Green Party members, rank and file members will be there. They were there at our Zoom call today as well. But I think that we need to continue discussing these differences. And then the other difference is the one you mentioned, where we, and I don't think it was a new thing. We obviously, needless to say, your viewers know this. We decided to go on the offensive, as did Abandon Harris, that we actually want to defeat Kamala Harris in Michigan, by which we did not mean that Jill Stein is going to win Michigan. Obviously, that means Donald Trump will win. But we never accepted this accusation that somehow we are aiding and abetting Donald Trump. No, the only people who aided and abetted Donald Trump are the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris's campaign, and they're responsible for that. It's at their doorstep. What we were campaigning on is not rewarding a purveyor of genocide. I mean, look at the absolutely devastating and damning UN report that 70% of the casualties were women and children and babies. I mean, it's absolutely shameful what the blood that's on the hands of the Democratic Party. And history is, as I've said before, history is going to judge all the labor leaders like Sean Fain who cheerleaded Kamala Harris. I mean, it's completely unacceptable. So in that context, I think it was correct to actually excite and energize people and say, we want to go on the offensive and fight for every vote for Jill Stein. But I think all along, we've had this disagreement with the Green Party that I think they prefer not to appear as the spoiler. They don't like the spoiler label. And they don't agree with what you have said, Keaton, earlier, that, blame, in this context, blame means credit. When the ruling class blames you, that's credit for the working class. It's a badge of honor. When the ruling class blames you, it's a badge of honor. It's them being forced to acknowledge that your offensive strategy actually worked. And so you should take that as a badge of honor.
So why? And I will say, and I think we all agree here on this, some people will try to say the Green Party is controlled opposition or they're an op. From dealings with them, and I trust my instincts about people, I don't get that sense. I get the sense that they're sincere. I don't say, and Jill agreed with this when I asked her, that there are not operatives and infiltrators trying to undermine them. But is the organization that? No, I don't think that. So why are they so afraid of taking that credit? Why are they so careful? Because that's part of what fuels that kind of talk. Because they say, well, why else would they not want to take credit for costing them the state if they're not controlled opposition? Why won't they really go for the jugular?
Yes, that is the key question. Yeah, I'm so glad you asked it that way. And yeah, first of all, I completely agree. They're not some plant or some operatives for the
Democrats. No, I don't get that.
It's nothing like that. They are extremely sincere. I mean, they're extremely sincere. And as I said, Jill Stein herself was self-sacrificing this year, as were many of the campaign volunteers. It has everything to do with their political analysis. And this is why I keep insisting that the political analysis that forms the backbone of what kind of organizing we do, that is the all-important thing. Without that, everything else crumbles. And so here's the big difference between, and it's not just about the Green Party, but here's the big difference between us as revolutionary workers and the Green Party and many other organizations like the Green Party, which is whether you're a revolutionary organization or a reformist organization. At the end of the day, you can be as genuine as they come, and which they are. They're genuine and sincere. But because their political analysis or worldview, however you want to call it, is that generally we want better things, but we're not trying to dismantle capitalism. That also translates, the failure to understand that capitalism itself should be dismantled then translates into the failure to understand that the parties of capitalism also need to be destroyed. You're not going to coexist with them. They won't let you coexist with them. They will go for the jugular, which means that we have to go for the jugular.
Yes.
It is class warfare, and it is relentless, and it is brutal. But if you disagree with that basic analysis, then that transforms into an idea that, yes, I don't like what the Democrats and Republicans are doing, but we want the Green Party or any such party to coexist with the Democrats and Republicans as a third party. That is why I never agreed with this formulation of it's a third party. It's not a third party. We need a party to disrupt politics as usual. In other words, we're not going to go and coexist. When I got elected, I didn't go into City Hall thinking I'm going to coexist with them, just be nicer than them to working class people. No, we were very clear. It has to be this sharp, and this unambiguous that you go there to disrupt the political peace. You are a disruptor. And I don't think the Green Party has that understanding or shares that analysis. And that's the basis of the disagreements, which is why we as socialists keep insisting that capitalism itself needs to be dismantled, which means its organizations, its apparatus, all of it needs to be dismantled, which means we're not in the business of somehow in this way or that way defending or protecting the Democratic Party, but just running in competition with them. No, we want to destroy the Democratic and Republican Party, which means that we want to fight them every step of the way, which means you can't make any gains. I mean, as a party for the working class, as a disruptor of the political peace, how do you make gains for the working class without actually delivering defeats to the Democratic Party? That makes no sense to me. It's a zero-sum game. Either the Democrat is going to get elected or you. Like in let me just be clear, in Seattle, there's no Republican Party to speak of. There were 8 Democrats on the city council and I was one socialist. Every time we won an election, and we won all of the elections, they never defeated us. We defeated a Democrat. We defeated the Democratic Party. How on earth does anyone propose to actually even build even a reformist party without actually delivering defeats to the Democrats? And here's where not only the Green Party are wrong, it's also like organizations like my former organization, Socialist Alternative. I mean, on the other end, they refused to actually campaign for Jill Stein, even though they endorsed her on paper, because they didn't want Kamala Harris to be defeated. They said this they made all kinds of intellectual acrobatics in order to reach this point. But essentially, effectively, this is what they said, that, we think Trump is such a danger that we need to, we don't agree with Kshama Sawant that Harris should be defeated. And that's another kind of capitulation.
Well, this brings to mind, a lot of people don't remember this. I'm curious to see if you do, Kshama, and Russell for that matter, because a lot of people forget this. But after 2016, which was a much closer Trump win than this one, where Jill Stein's vote totals in Michigan were actually larger than Trump's margin of victory. I believe that was true of Wisconsin as well. After the election, if you remember, Jill Stein did this thing where she funded recounts in those 3 states to make sure that Trump actually won, which struck me as an apology for having run. It struck me as an apology for having been a difference maker. And I don't understand that. Didn't you run to influence the outcome? If you're a disruptor, you should be proud that your vote total was higher than Trump's margin of victory. Yeah, so why are you why are you spending party money to basically apologize for having cost Hillary Clinton the election? That's how it read to me. I never understood that or why she did that. If she's willing to talk to me ever again after this, I'll ask her.
Yeah, I don't know if Russell, you wanted to say something and I'm jumping in, but yeah, we never agreed with the recount. And you're dead right, Keaton. That was the whole motivation behind the recount, that we just want to prove that we did not cause the Democrats the vote. We did not cause Hillary Clinton her loss. And it was, that was combined with their talking point, which I'm sure you guys have heard. They repeatedly say this, where they say that, people who voted for us are people who wouldn't have voted at all. So we didn't cost any votes for you.
They keep jumping into our comment section on that to just their hair on fire. This is where you got it wrong. None of those people would have voted for Kamala Harris. Like, if you support the Green Party, why do you want so badly to convince people that you make no difference?
Right, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it is about what I was saying earlier, is that they don't want to pose this question as, shouldn't the working class actually be destroying the parties of capitalism? And they want to coexist with them, but as a much more pro working class and pro climate, addressing climate change and all of that kind of party. But that completely misses the reality under capitalism, that actually everything is a fight till the end. And you cannot actually win any fight unless you win working class people over. So yes, it is. I find it bizarre for them to say, well, we didn't take voters away from Harris. Well, if you did, or the Democrats, well, if you didn't, then you're not actually succeeding at the task that really needs to be accomplished, which is winning people away from the Democratic Party.
Yes.
We take great pride in winning people away from the Democratic Party. That's our task.
That's kind of the point.
Of course, I convinced my wife to vote for Jill Stein over Kamala Harris. If I didn't, she'd vote for Kamala Harris. So that's one vote I can promise you went to Jill Stein that would have gone to Kamala Harris. Now, what if you're the Greens? What do you want to give that vote back? What, do you not like that? You know, turn back the clock and have her vote for Kamala? Like, I don't get it.
All right, so Kshama, something that I'm seeing that definitely plays to a lot of what I've been saying. From Joe Rogan to I just saw Matt Taibbi just drop something like this. I'm covering something that the actress Justine Bateman did on Twitter a little later. This rad lib cancel culture, identity politics, critical social justice, whatever you want to call it, it became so oppressive and so distasteful to so many people that the right wing has claimed the mantle of freedom of speech and personal liberty, and it is going to be very hard to get it back. I feel that any workers' party that is going to be successful with the working class is going to have to disavow all of that shit. Now, that does not mean you throw people under the bus, but in my opinion, that whole way of approaching those issues was always intended to divide the working class. It was always intended to distract from a class-based analysis of social conflict. And we've seen it tear apart not-for-profit organizations with people screaming at each other for not being sufficiently correct in their speech or in their actions or in their history or in their social media. That shit, to me, must be a non-starter. You want to talk about that, you need to go somewhere else. You need to go somewhere else because it destroys every organization that gets infected by it, and it is going to make it impossible to attract working class people if that's part of your identity.
Yes. First of all, if you look at just even the theories, like, I mean, we could talk about this a lot, but just very briefly, if you look at the theory, so-called theory, I mean, I completely reject it and I don't want to be respectful towards it, but the so-called theory of intersectionality, the way it's that whole whatever flow chart, all these oppressions, different oppressions, and they put class next to it. That's one of the oppressions. That's completely, that's turning reality completely upside down. They refuse to, I mean, it's the whole idea of intersectionality and identity politics is in service of the ruling class. I mean, individual practitioners of those ideas could be innocent. And, a whole generation, especially in cities like Seattle, has grown up on those ideas. And they're not all ill-intentioned, but they have to be won away from them. And we have done that a lot. But the idea itself is my point. The idea itself is in service of the ruling class, where it is trying to negate the realities under capitalism, which is it's the class structure of the system that then leads to oppressions of various kinds, because that is necessary for the system of capitalism in order to carry out the horrors that it perpetrates on ordinary people. I mean, Keaton, you referred to this earlier, like, who are the biggest racists right now? The people who are allowing the genocide in Gaza to happen. Well, part of that is being engineered by telling liberals or not telling them, but, sort of sending the message to liberals of dehumanizing Palestinian people, like their humanity is less important than this or that wedge issue in the United States. And so that's the goal of these kinds of ideas. So these ideas fundamentally are deeply, deeply pernicious, and we have to reject them. We have to always ground ourselves in class analysis, meaning that class is the underpinning of capitalism. Class and the oppositional this whatever goals of the capitalist class versus the rest of us, that capitalism in that sense being a zero-sum game, that is at the center of it, and that then leads to all kinds of misogyny, racism. And it's not that all of these oppressions started on with when capitalism came into being, but these oppressions came into being with class society as a whole. Class society, in order to protect, for example, personal wealth, the ideas of patrilineal societies, subjugation of women, all of this came about through the class structure. And so
to guarantee your inheritance.
And that also meant you could subjugate a whole section of society, not just women, but men and women together, because they weren't the owners of the wealth and you wanted to keep them that way. So all of that is in the mix, and we have to absolutely reject it. I'll also say another point, which is that it can be said in two ways, and it needs to be said in two ways. One is for the people who said that I'm voting for Harris despite this, the unspeakable killings happening in Gaza and Lebanon, because I care about LGBTQ rights. Well, you can't actually, in any genuine way, if you think about it, and if you look at history, there is no basis for fighting against any kind of oppression if those same people who claim to be fighting against a type of oppression are then allowing another type of oppression to happen. If you're against oppression, you're against oppression, period. So there is no basis for winning gay rights or black rights or any kind, while the same people are then allowing this horror to be to continue in Gaza. And one of the interviews we did on Strike in our broadcast was with this black writer called Ijeoma Oluo, who said that, at the very least, perpetrating a genocide should cost you your job. She was refusing to support Kamala Harris, and I'm sure she came under a lot of pressure as a black public figure to do that, to support Harris, but she refused to. And one of the points she made was this, like, what prospects are there for us to actually fight for black people when, as black people, we have allowed this to happen? There is no such prospect. And then one other thing I'll say is that if you look at the history of any kind of fight against oppression, whether it was Roe v. Wade or gay rights or anything like that, black rights, it always came through mass movements and rank and file labor. It came, gay rights came through actions like Stonewall Rebellion. What did the Democrats do? The Democratic Party is the party of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and Defense of Marriage Act. That's the Democratic Party. And it was always rank and file organizing that defeated these kinds of oppression. So the thing I was trying to say is that we should reject this false dichotomy between fighting against one oppression versus fighting against another. As a matter of fact, if you don't fight against all, then we're going to see a downhill sort of race to the bottom for all of them.
Absolutely. Yes, I think it's very well said. I want to show you one more thing before we let you go, Kshama. This is a group called the American Communist Party. Executive Chairman Haz Al-Din, reporting from Carbondale, Illinois, as Illinois and Missouri comrades from the American Communist Party organize a clothing and food distribution in preparation for the coming winter for members of the community in need. So this is a fairly new organization doing some mutual aid right after Election Day. Here's a brief video.
Everyone, we at the American Communist Party, and particularly the Illinois chapter, but other chapters as well, have come down to Carbondale for a community service event where we're going to be distributing clothing and food to the needy, to the homeless, to working class people that can't pay their bills under this current regime. We rented out a van and everything. We drove about 5 hours. Some of us even
I'm sure the rental company really appreciates the hammer and sickle you plastered on the side of the van.
What our guys have been doing. So
it came
they very efficiently, packaged food. The organization, as you can see, is incredible. They did this very quickly, by the way. They set everything up, and we've already had so many people come by, and the event is not even officially started yet. It's going to be starting in about 10 minutes or so. And over here, we're distributing jackets and clothes, and this is what we do as a party. This is what our members are up to day in and day out. And the whole Illinois chapter, most of it has come together for this, as well as people from other chapters. And the difficult part is over, but we're going to be here for actually another 5 hours or so. And we are set up here in the middle of the town. And, the goal is basically to demonstrate, again, lead by deed, not just by word. Show people by example what it is we're all about.
So I think that kind of mutual aid is great. I think ballot measures are one way to maybe put some quick wins on the board. I think this is another way. I think showing people, hey, you know what? Communism is not about lining people up and shooting them. It's about giving out jackets before the winter. It's about handing out food. Like, I think...
And if they try to stop you, line them up and shoot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's terrific. And one thing one thing that struck me when I saw this tweet and I watched this video is the difference between communists and the socialists and the liberals in the wake of Trump's victory. The liberals have given into nihilism, defeat. Oh, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. The hell with it. I'm checking out. The actual leftists I know, including, including these guys apparently, are like, fuck it, let's go. Now it's time to go. We're inspired by this. We see an opening. We see a moment of flux, a moment of crisis. A moment where working people are making a change. Let's do it. Let's go out there and let's win now. Let's go do shit now. Just that revolutionary optimism, as Nick says, is so present where it's nowhere to be seen in Democratic circles. Go ahead, Russell.
And you want to lay the groundwork for that now because people are going to be very quickly disabused of the idea that a bunch of billionaires are going to come save them now.
Exactly.
That Elon and Trump have real interest in the working class and improving their conditions. So you want to lay the groundwork to catch those people. Right now they're riding high. Yeah, it's all going to be great. In a couple of years, not so much.
Right. Elon Musk sees Javier Milei's Argentina as a model society. So it's a great time to get your hands on a jacket if you need one, folks, is the takeaway from that. Yeah. So what do you think about that, about mutual aid and that whole effort?
Well, first of all, just on a more fundamental level, I could not agree more about this is the moment to actually do something. And in fact, it also relates to Russell's point earlier about how, as part of the groundwork, we have to reject this identitarian kind of approach. I think all of that relates to how it is actually urgent for us to launch some concrete campaigns, when I say concrete campaigns, I mean around some concrete demands, like a $25 an hour minimum wage, or taxing big business to fund affordable housing or public schools, or whatever the question might be in a given location. And we have to be strategic about which campaigns we take up, of course, because we want to be able to fight to win and not make a we don't want to turn it into shambles. We want to be very strategic and organized about all of that. And having said that, I think that my ideas on mutual aid, I've discussed this with Nick in one of our conversations, but on our show, where I think we had a little bit of a debate about it, which is that Nick Cruz from RBN, which is that I think that mutual aid is extremely well-meaning. But I would much prefer that we put all of that energy into winning something like an Amazon tax. So rather than spend a lot of time and effort and energy in organizing, hours in distributing food and clothing, not that that's a bad thing. Obviously, God knows it's sometimes I find it just the sadness of what's happening in the world and how much people are suffering. To be honest with you, there are moments when it's just debilitating. It's just really, really too much. It's too much. It makes me so angry and so just really sad. But I don't think that mutual aid is the most fruitful avenue and strategic avenue for us. I would say that rather than do a few truckloads of food and clothing, instead, let's fight for something like the Amazon tax. The Amazon tax, it was a small, in the larger scheme of things, in terms of how deep the inequality is right now, it's a small thing. But look at what we won. And we were a small organization. We did have an elected position, which was a huge thing in our favor. And then we did it during the George Floyd protests. And actually, I want to make a point related to identity politics also, if I have a moment. But we won over $214 million annually from big corporations like Amazon and Starbucks to fund affordable housing. That is massive. It's massive compared to anything we can afford to accomplish using mutual aid. If you look at the, for example, the crowdfunding statistics, I mean, they're pretty sad because for the simple reason that we don't have money, and crowdfunding mutual aid is being done by working people for working people, but working people don't have any money. We need to actually wrest all kinds of concessions from the ruling class because they are the ones who have all the wealth. So if you look at the statistics out of crowdfunding platforms, I believe the average success rate for campaigns is about 22%. Now, granted, that includes all kinds of crowdfunding, but I'm mentioning that because a lot of healthcare needs are now, they're crowdfunding. You see this on Facebook and Instagram all the time. Like I have this big hospital bill. It's really, really sad. I mean, it's just really, it makes you want to cry. But these are desperate people, and we are all among those desperate people because we don't have the money, we don't have healthcare. But if you look at the success rate, it's not surprising that about 80% of the crowdfunding attempts fail to raise the desired amounts of money because nobody has the money, and billionaires have all this cash. So we need to go where we need to attack where it needs to be attacked. And so I would much rather put all the energies into all our well-meaning energies into winning ballot measures like taxing the rich, like winning higher minimum wages, and in the process, politically organizing people, which ultimately, more than any reform we can actually win under capitalism, the political clarity that we can instill in more and more working people to build the basis for the fights in the future, because we need revolutionary movements against capitalism. That is the biggest victory that you can win through fighting campaigns like that, as opposed to what you can win through mutual aid, which, as well-meaning as they are, I don't think that that's the best use. But I just wanted to mention that when we won the Amazon tax, we won it during George Floyd, and the BLM misleaders went to war against it, saying that it's not a black issue.
Wow.
Can you believe it? They said it's not a black issue. And we won.
Wow, they were living in that mansion? They were living over in that mansion?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we rejected their gatekeeping, and we went straight to rank and file black people in the protest, and also people in general. It's not just black people. And they all said, hell yes, I want to tax Amazon and I want affordable housing. So anyway, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that is, I mean, and I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite now because I hate the phrase walk and chew gum at the same time. It always makes me cringe when I hear people say that. But in this case, I do think it is possible. And I think the political efficacy of doing mutual aid, and I agree, like, that shouldn't come necessarily at the expense of other projects, obviously. But I think the political use of that, especially when we're trying to fight this fight as, socialists or, in this case, as communists, the word socialist.
I think it's good advertising.
Well,
I think
yeah,
it's a good
because,
way to draw people in.
And it's also a good way to dispel people to sort of, deprogram people of all this propaganda about socialists and communists, that all we want to do is rule over you and lord over you and order you around and control every aspect of your life. I think it's a good way of getting out there and say, actually, what we want to do is make sure that everybody who needs food has food, that everybody who needs clothing has clothing. Like, I think it's good outreach because, I mean, this probably as well, if not better than any active politician in this country. Those words, socialist and communist, they use the Democrats and the Republicans use that to try and skewer you. And I think, that kind of outreach just builds goodwill. I think there's great political efficacy in that. Now, I don't think should that come at the expense of like more militant projects like you're talking about, which is going directly at. No, of course not. But I do think in this case, I think there is a place for both. Yeah,
that's where you can draw in a lot of recruits for that.
Right.
You convert them to party members.
Hey, these people aren't as mean as the media says they are. They gave me a jacket. They hooked me up with some food ahead of winter. Like, I think it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree at all about the fact that it's good. And I'm as I said, I certainly just feel like so much needs to be done. And I do whatever little I can do, my share of this as well. I'll just say a few things.
What I'm really asking is, can I sleep on your couch when I come to Seattle? That's what I really am asking.
Yes, you can.
We're gonna run this clip titled "Shocker: Kshama Sawant against coats for poor."
Yeah, right.
No, I'm not against coats for poor. What I want is to win coats for all poor people,
of course, yes.
Which will require a tax on the rich, is what I'm saying.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, look, if it's not coming at the expense of other kind of bigger organizing, I don't disagree. And like I said, I think all of us perform such acts that can be characterized as mutual aid in our life, but I think there are a few things I would add to this discussion. One is that in terms of the advertising it gives you, as you were saying, Russell, I mean, that's not a bad thing. In fact, whatever we can do to push back against the demonizing and vilification of socialists and communists. And by the way, I'm a communist as well. I mean, I just don't say communist because it doesn't mean anything to people. If you say socialist and you explain socialism, that means something to people. It's not that we're trying to hide anything. But I think as far as that is concerned, I do think that we have entered an era where I don't see that as being a major barrier. Yes, if the attraction for socialist ideas grows dramatically, then expect a whole McCarthyism part 2 kind of thing. Expect a massive campaign. The FBI really carrying out all kinds of covert operations. All of that is going to happen. But as far as the consciousness of a whole generation, couple of generations of young people, I don't see that as being the barrier. I mean, for us, it was never a barrier. I mean, people were more like, well, if fighting for 15, if you call yourself socialist and you are fighting for poor people and working people and you're trying to organize us, then I'm on board and maybe I'm a socialist. I mean, that's the kind of response we got. It was never a barrier. The Democrats tried to demonize us. They got no traction out of it. I mean, they did get traction out of people who would otherwise even disagree with us, whether we called ourselves socialists or not. They disagree with our policies of, fighting the rich and all of that. But as far as our audience of working class and young people is concerned, I don't see that as a major barrier. So I don't find that as a compelling reason to do this. What I would say is a couple of things. One is, it would be better if we did, I mean, yes, the big efforts like Amazon tax and minimum wage increase ballot initiative, those are massive undertakings. We cannot underestimate them. And I agree about, I also don't like the metaphor walk and chew gum, but I agree with the spirit of it that, it doesn't mean that you can only be doing one thing. If we can do local campaigns of a small scale alongside a big undertaking like a ballot measure, which will be a massive fight, then absolutely we should. But what I would say is that it's better to focus on individual campaigns that are not about giving away things, where it's not really a political education of any real kind. Instead, I would prefer individual campaigns like tenant rights, where it's not going to be a change in citywide policy, but it will actually, one, lead to potentially a victory for a group of tenants, but it will, most importantly, politically educate a whole series of people, not just the tenants, but the people who end up participating in it, the union members whom we call for, because they will need to put pressure on their leadership. So the experience of going up against leadership and then winning, that is far too precious. And I don't think that, I don't feel convinced that, well, we can do this and that. No, I mean, people have limited time to offer, people are working 2 jobs. I mean, life is hard. And so I feel like we have to make the best possible use, the most strategic use of people's time. And that, I think, is better done by the big campaigns and the local campaigns that are more politicized rather than giving things away, where there's an actual fight. If there's an actual fight with entities of the ruling class, that is the most valuable lesson for people. Without actually going through that struggle, people don't learn. That's how you think Democrats are your friends. When you go up against them, you see them being completely nasty. That's when your consciousness raises and you realize, these are not my fucking friends. They're jerks, and I cannot have illusions in them. So that's one thing. And this one last thing I'll say is that part of my discomfort with this type of, putting too much emphasis on mutual aid, and I'm not saying that you are, is that it can actually create illusions that this can be the solution, because, mutual aid completely sidesteps class struggle. And class struggle is what we need to take people towards, which is going up against the powerful and winning, or even if not winning, learning political lessons. Anything that sidesteps that makes me uncomfortable, because that is the main thing we need to be doing, is pushing people into class struggle.
Okay, well, one last piece of this that I want to get your comment on, because I raised it a while ago, but I think we kind of got off it, is whether it's you or Nick or even the Greens and Jill or the ACP, I see such readiness to go amongst like the actual left, whereas the liberals, the Democrats are just totally depressed. They have succumbed to nihilism. And I think that speaks volumes. Like, we see this opportunity. I could hear it. I mean, I always hear it in your voice when you get going, but like, especially now, like, let's go. Let's do it. Let's fight now. Let's get on this right now. Let's start winning right now. We can do this right now. Whereas the Democrats are just completely in shambles. They have no direction. And I think that speaks volumes about the sort of ideological underpinnings of each sect. What do you have to say to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't say that better. I mean, it absolutely has everything to do with the political analysis, political worldview. And in fact, it is even more insidious than what starts out as nihilism, right? I mean, I agree with you. It is they're in shambles, just like they were in 2016 after Trump won. They were shell-shocked. We were the ones who organized the protest. I mean, little old as we had small organization.
This is worse, though. I mean, at least in 2016, they organized the Pussy Hat March. They're not even doing that this time. This is just like they are just completely.
They were.
I
was planning once we saw how the election was going to go when we were covering it. I was like, oh man, I got to go down to Trump Tower tomorrow because last time in 2016, people protested out there for a week. For a week, anytime you went in front of Trump Tower, there were people protesting. This time, it was like a little protest in New York, not even at Trump Tower.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it. Nothing like last time.
No, you're absolutely right. And even there, like the last time, it was just ordinary people, taking initiative on themselves, and smaller organizations like ours who were pushing for it. The Democrats did nothing. They didn't. I mean, yes, they did do the Women's March later during inauguration, but right after Trump was declared,
I call that the Seinfeld March, the march about nothing.
Yes, I mean that was part of the problem. There were no demands. I mean, it was aggressive.
No.
And that's what I was trying to say. That actually
we don't like this.
Yeah,
right? That seemed to be the message. We don't like this.
It was.
We have pussy hats.
Yeah, and it was a what you call the Seinfeld March. It really is. That's a fun. I've not heard that before. It is hilarious. I love the Seinfeld show, by the way. I love it
that he's such a genocidal maniac. We love that show. It's horrible, right? I mean, it ruins the show because it's a great show.
Horrible.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I was about to say, actually, Keaton, that I like the show and nihilism for laughs, but I don't actually like nihilism in reality. And ultimately, nihilism, even if it remains nihilism, is destructive. But what I was going to say is actually, as far as the Democratic Party and their spokespeople are concerned, what presents itself as nihilism on day one actually then equates to let's go along with the Trump right-wing type of policies, right? It is the same people then who say, like Obama, who said, let's give Trump a chance or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote. And then George W. Bush, he was evil incarnate. Ralph Nader was vilified for running against him. And then when the Iraq war was declared by George W. Bush, all these Democrats, they cheerleaded the Iraq war. They have so much blood on their hands. And so I think it's also, nihilism is also, as far as they're concerned, it's the disguise for what they really want to do, which is, again, take the policy making in Washington, D.C. more and more right-wing, more and more hawkish, more and more anti-working class.
All right. Well, you can find more about Kshama and her organization at workerstrikeback.org. There's a big conference coming up February 22nd in Seattle. We will have much more to say about that as it approaches, and I'm sure we'll
I will be there.
Yes.
We'll try to get Keaton out of that one meal town of his.
Yeah, exactly. Russell will definitely be there. I will do my very best. It's hard to promise anything with a newborn this far in advance, but I will let you know in advance for sure. That's February 22nd. I'm sure we'll talk much more between now and then. Always such a pleasure to talk to you. Kshama Sawant, thank you so much for joining us. We will talk to you soon. Is there any last plug you got to get in before you go?
I forgot to say, Chris Hedges is going to be speaking at the organizing conference, which is
beautiful.
Okay.
really
Awesome.
important.
Awesome. So, that's excellent. All righty. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kshama. Always a pleasure to talk to you. We will talk to you again real soon, no doubt.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kshama.
Bye-bye. Kshama Sawant, everybody. Wow, what an interview. I think that was our best one with Kshama so far. And we've had a lot of good ones. But yeah, that was a good one. Always good to talk to Kshama, especially at a time like this where, yeah, man, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Rock and roll.
No laying down here.
That's why I was looking forward to this election being over.
Yeah.
No matter how it came out, so we could get to this.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do the real stuff.
Yeah, let's do the real stuff. Fuck this Kamala Harris, Donald Trump bullshit. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Exactly.
So, feels good. Feels good to talk to Kshama. It was a great interview. We thank her for joining. And we got plenty more show going on. Hey, we got some business to take care of here. This is 2,200 strong in the YouTube chat, 1,800 strong on Rumble. Hit that like button, folks. Hit that subscribe button. We got some super chats. We got some Rumble rants. We got Jake in the booth taking care of all that tonight. JM, thanks for the $2 and the thumbs up. Appreciate that. DC, thanks for the $2. Time heals all burdens. Thank you, DC. Britsman, thanks for the $1.99. I wish I could like Rumble, but the app is janky AF. All right, well, hang in there, Britsman. L337, thanks for the donation. Saw you guys on JD a few months ago. Been watching ever since. Voted Trump in 16 and 20 in Virginia. Claudia De La Cruz was on the ballot, so I voted for her. All right, nice work. Right. Thank you. Landrew, thanks for the $100. Let's have a sound drop for Landrew and a cowbell for Landrew. Landrew says, thank you, Kshama. A Jill Stein victory. As a member of Workers Strike Back, I nominate Brianna Joy Gray for president in 2028. We need to start now. What are you dividing the movement so early, Landrew?
Yeah,
kidding, joking.
I mean, we can't endorse her until she comes on.
Yeah, exactly. That's unfinished business.
Landrew is dead.
I kid, Landrew. Thank you for the generous donation. We need to start now. Free Palestine, more to follow. Yeah, Landrew was saying in the chat that he won a bet on the election, so he's going to shower us with his winnings tonight.
Nice. All right.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Landrew. Marathon Man. Used this to buy Bernie a Castleberry pit cook barbecue sandwich, then put him on a bus to his summer camp. Thank you.
All right. Y'all are going to like my intermission today. I put together some lib meltdowns, and I got a very funny bit of a guy who was trolling, posing as a white dudes for Kamala guy at the Austin City Council. That was pretty funny.
Yes, I think I remember that. I think I did see that.
So the intermission's pretty funny. You'll enjoy it.
Kinky, thanks for the $2. California's wage prop lost, as did rent control. Well, that's funny. They lost in a blue state. I was only looking in the red states because I wanted to make the point about the red states. So that's funny. So the economic justice won in red states, but not California. That's not terribly surprising, come to think of it. Landrew, thanks for another $100. Look at that.
Damn, yo.
Let's give another sound drop for Landrew. And we got his sound drop ready to go. There we go.
Landrew is dead.
Landrew says, having placed a bet on a Trump victory of greater than 80 electoral votes, time to share. We are in for a wild ride. Next S&P 500 put options. Free Palestine. Thank you, Landrew. Appreciate that.
I could have used a little more cowbell.
David Santucci, thanks for the $20. Progressive state ballot initiatives are welcome, but there are limitations on what can be done at the state level. Only federal government can print its own money. That's true, David. Eric Rousseau, I hear the average lifespan of an empire is 250 years. Yes, did you email something?
I saw that in the box, yeah. There's a video. Did you notice this? Everyone's trying to get us to bring on this TikToker who did a video about why the Democratic Party sucks.
Yeah, that's what's her name. She does the Michael Rappaport impressions. I forget her name. Blakely.
Oh, does she?
Is that it? Yeah. Blakely, I think that's her name. Yeah, we will look into that for sure. That sounds fun. Michael Castillo for 100. Let's have a cowbell for Michael Castillo.
Michael, you got to get a nickname that I can turn into a sound drop.
We need to get a sound drop for you, Michael.
Yeah.
We used
to have Cyrus.
And we'll use it.
We used to have Cyrus. I used to use the Warrior sound drop.
That's right. What happened to Cyrus?
They got Landrew. You're like the first big roller without like an easy name to create a sound drop for.
Exactly. Yeah. Michael Castillo says, good evening, gentlemen. Jimmy Dore's Grumble Time was so good, I listened to it twice. Have a nice evening, gentlemen. Yeah, it's funny. I told Jimmy I was going to watch that, and I ended up falling asleep kind of early. It was at 10 o'clock So I got to catch up on that. But I think the whole thing is replayable on Rumble. So thank you, Michael.
You know what I've been watching because I'm reading. Oh, how do you say his name? Virokakis, the guy techno-feudalism.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading that, this guy has a Madman reference every other page. He's obsessed with that show. So finally, I was like, all right, I never actually watched Mad Men. I saw a couple episodes, but I never actually watched it.
I thought it was very
boring. Now that's my binge watch. Honestly, that's why I never watched it, because I watched a few episodes and I was like, yeah, it's well crafted, but it's kind of tedious.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I understand why like women like it. You get to watch John Hamm looking all spiffy and but besides that,
I used to, it's funny, all that shit's destroyed now. But when my grandfather was like selling the house and moving into the retirement home, he let me go through his wardrobe. When I went to college, I had the Mad Men wardrobe because he had all this shit in a cedar closet from the 60s with like the thin lapels and the thin ties. Right. I took all those suits.
It's fun. I mean, the look of Mad Men is so distinct. I remember I
love that look. I think that was the best American men's fashion of all time.
It was pretty dapper. I was working crew on a film that John Slattery had been acting in, and this was his first day on the set. It took place in Ohio, but they doubled Newburgh from Ohio. It was very like Rust Belt kind of film. Right. And so I show up late because I was an unpaid intern, so I could come and go as I pleased. So I showed up while everybody was eating lunch, and so I'm sitting in the lunchroom. They had rented this like church or some I forget what it was, some community building to do a shoot. And we're having lunch, and I'm reading the newspaper. At the time, there were newspapers about the Yankee game the previous night because it was the playoffs. And there's one guy, this scraggly-looking guy with a stubble and a beard and a baseball hat and a dirty hoodie and jeans, comes up, and he starts talking to me about the Yankee game. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of keep to myself around people. Like, I'm polite, but I'm not really a gregarious type. Will not stop talking to me about the goddamn Yankee games. So finally, I get a look, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy talking to me about the Yankee? It was John Slattery from Mad Men. I did not recognize him because on Mad Men he's this dapper with the slick hair and the suit. And this, I thought, is this who is this guy? Is this another crew guy? Is this a janitor at the? No, it's him. So he was a nice guy, but that's how distinct the look of that show is. It's like it's very much like a museum. Yeah, but other than that, I don't find it interesting at all.
I'm assuming it picks up.
Yeah,
I'm assuming. Look, it's good. Like, you have to admire the craftsmanship and the way they really delved so much into the cultural milieu that I find a lot of science fiction geeks are also history geeks because it's kind of the same thing in reverse. Okay, so what if you change this, that, and that factor? What would it do to the culture? Right. So I thought they did a great job showing how the whole headspace, the whole cultural assumption that you would live in if you were in that period was different. I don't think I've ever seen that period represented as well on that level. And I don't feel like it's revisionist. I don't feel like they're exaggerating in order to play to modern sensibilities. No, man. Like, if you go back and you read books from that period, you look at magazines from that period, you look at films from that period, yeah, that looks about right.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely well done in that way. For sure. Noah Goop. Netanyahu said Trump and him agree on what to do about Iran. The peace candidate, folks. Enjoy. Thank you, Noah Goop. Yes, there is plenty to be desired there for sure. Hillary Hinton says you really have to admire the amount of coordination required to create and sustain the football hooligan pogrom narrative, especially since the people who benefit absolutely do not control the media. Well, we are going to be doing that story over on Rumble after the switch, before the Q&A.
We are covering it, but we cannot cover that the way we want to cover it on this side of the wall.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to take any chances there. Yeah. Abiding 71. Every day I hear all the terrible things Trump will do, but then I'm comforted in the fact that we have Joe Manchin and the parliamentarian to thwart such evil. There you go. Yes, norms and guardrails. Abiding. Appreciate that. Dem campaign panic before election was pretty transparent. You sure you two didn't get that influencer TikTok cash for your dog shit prediction? Hey, we went based on what we had at the time. That's all.
You know what? Honestly, I'm putting together another piece today, and we'll get to it. But I picked up some data points from that. You know, I was pretty accurate in 2016, and I was pretty accurate in 2020. My theory, actually, on why, personally, speaking for myself, I didn't see that coming. I think doing this gig, you constantly have to be focused on the day's news, and it doesn't really allow you to just kind of float around and be intuitive and look at this and look at this and look at this. Because I realized there were a bunch of data points I just didn't even catch. And I think it's partly because I'm doing this. Like I don't have time to look at shit that I'm not doing for the show.
That could be. I mean, for me, it was just an intuitive thing. I sensed that the 2022 electorate would be the one that showed up. I just didn't think Trump had the juice. I didn't think he had the enthusiasm to drive that turnout this time. I thought there was a chance he did. Like I said, I wasn't 60% sure. I was 55. I said this could go either way. My gut told me he didn't have the enthusiasm this time.
There were data points that indicated he did that I never saw. I thought abortion was going to be much more decisive, but there were things, I'll talk about it later when we do the piece. There were indications that women were not going to vote on that I was not aware of.
After nearly 6 days, California has only counted 66% of total votes. Can you imagine in a hypothetical scenario, California decided the election? Yeah. Well, I mean, they've projected it for Kamala anyway. Like the thing is, like, it's so blue that they don't have to count all the votes for them to know, okay, they're not going to come close. Like they project California when the clock strikes 11 Eastern. That just automatically goes in the blue column. Okay, let's go on. We got plenty more show here to do tonight. Plenty more super chats and Rumble rants. We got Jake in the booth. Jake will probably do the scroll after Russell's Gen X segment. I'll do an ad read after this one. So, folks, this is this segment is like one of those movies where we show you the end first, and then we go back to the very beginning and go all the way up to the end again. How did we get there?
Memento.
Yeah,
basically.
memento. Yeah, how did we get
This
there?
is the memento of segments.
Kind of thing, yeah. Well, more like the American Beauty kind of thing, where he says, I'll be dead, and then you wonder, how does that happen, right? So Donald Trump, yesterday night, tweets out, I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration, which is currently in formation. I very much enjoyed and appreciated working with them previously and would like to thank them for their service to our country. Make America great again. So why did he feel a need to tweet this out or to truth this out? Well, this all kind of started before the election, October 26th, on the Joe Rogan appearance, where Trump had a kind word to say about Mike Pompeo, widely regarded by even among the MAGA base as one of the chief villains of the first Trump term. So here he is.
Is the JFK files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I opened them up partially. I was met with, from good people, good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person.
Good person. Okay, so that kind of rubbed a lot of the base the wrong way. On top of that, you had Mike Pompeo himself appear in the flesh at a Trump rally down the home stretch of the campaign. This was the night before election night. Here he is on stage.
To secure our southern border, we will bring... Now, President Trump's going to secure our southern border. We will bring peace back to the world. We will take down the ring of fire. We will support our friends in Israel, but he's going to need help to do that.
Again, very limited applause for Israel. You see the people in back. Back there. It's like, yeah, some people applauded, but not much.
He's going to need help to do that. President Trump will need help to do that. And you in Pennsylvania have the chance to send that help. I've known Dave McCormick for 40 years, since we were cadets at West Point when I was a much younger man.
So he was now he says he was appearing there primarily in support of the Senate candidate. Of course, it is a Trump rally. And so, look, this set off some alarm bells. These were some red flags. And then after the election, multiple outlets reporting that Mike Pompeo is under consideration for a high-level cabinet spot. He was Secretary of State last time. They were thinking more Secretary of Defense. This time, there he is, alongside Mike Walls and Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton, hardly a prize either, unless you're into the Pee Wee Herman meets Jigsaw Killer type. But Mike Pompeo under consideration for Defense Secretary, according to Politico, also according to Reuters. Who could Trump pick for his new cabinet? Here are the top contenders. Mike Pompeo. There's that name again. Pompeo, who served as CIA director and Secretary of State during Trump's first term, is considered a top contender for Secretary of Defense, but could land in various slots involving national security, intelligence, or diplomacy. While he flirted with a Republican primary challenge against Trump, Pompeo never pulled the trigger, and he is now back on friendly terms with the president-elect after a period of awkwardness. He stands out as possibly the fiercest defender of Ukraine among Trump's close allies, a position that puts him at odds with most high-ranking figures in his potential boss's camp. So like I said, you had multiple outlets reporting that he was towards the top of the list, and the MAGA base did not like that. So the cat signal went up. Cat turd says, I'm on it. Let's trend it. No Pompeo. This was at noon on Thursday. Thursday. I'm sorry, Friday. Today's the 10th, so that would have been Friday. Yes. Trend it. No Pompeo. Dan Bongino comes out. Mike Pompeo is an absolute no-go. Now, this guy's banned on YouTube, so I don't even know if we're allowed to play his videos here, so I will leave it at the screenshot. But major Trump media backer says hell no to Pompeo. Deplorable puppy. Just say no to Mike Pompeo. By 12:48, it was trending number 7. So this was about 42 minutes after the initial cat turd signal went out to trend no Pompeo. It's at number 7 nationwide in less than 1 hour. Stacey Ann says, you're trying to sell it, and I'm not buying it. Kind of directly challenging Donald Trump. Like, they sensed that he was going to try and pull some bullshit, and they said, no, we can't do this. By 1:27, no Pompeo, trending number 3. Let's get it to number 1. Breaking by 2:24, no Pompeo is now the number 2 trend in the USA. Almost there. Keep it going. And by that evening, we did it. No Pompeo, now the number 1 trend in the United States. Not the number 1 politics trend, the number 1 trend in the United States. Truth, justice, no Pompeo. He is part of the deep state and ordered the assassination of Julian Assange. He is not loyal to President Trump. He is a double agent working for the deep state and the globalists. He did nothing to help President Trump and America. Greg Snow, don't even think about it. No to Pompeo. Roger Stone, longtime Trump confidant. Pompeo is a neocon who champions endless war, led the charge to assassinate Julian Assange, and backed Jack Smith's persecution of President Trump. No Pompeo, and that leads you here. Donald Trump announces, I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration. It's the tweet we showed at the top of this segment here. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweets out a celebration. We are draining the swamp. America first. Killian here says, breaking, Trump announces Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo will not be invited to join the Trump administration. This is huge. A lot of celebration here. Dave Smith, friend of the show, Dave Smith, great guy, always up for a back and forth, apparently. Yeah. It's not with us.
Yeah. He loves us.
Yeah, he loves us. The Stop Pompeo movement is great, but it's not enough, he says. Right now, we need maximum pressure to keep all neocons and war hawks out of the Trump administration. They have had their time at the table and brought nothing but disaster to the world and this country. America first, screw the war machine. Now, you notice that has 4.2 million views. Right. 2.7 of those, as of whenever I put this segment together, were courtesy of this Donald Trump Jr. quote tweet, agreed, I'm on it. So it is just kind of wild to see the Twitter conversation have this direct line of communication to the White House. Like, this is this is actually one of the silver linings of Elon being so close to Trump. Elon has basically become his Steve Bannon now. I mean, the guy's fucking right near him. He was on the call to Zelensky. He's hanging out on the golf course playing golf with the grandkids. Like, he's his right-hand man now, which is terrifying in the sense that, as we mentioned with Kshama, this is a guy who looks at Javier Milei's Argentina and says, yeah, we should do that. The bright side of it is, though, that we told you Trump is
freedom, Keaton.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We told you Trump is a narcissist. We told you Trump cares about being loved. And we told you he cares about good ratings. He wants his base to love him and support him. And now you have the owner of Twitter as his right-hand man. So when Trump flirts with stabbing the base in the back and bringing in a guy like Pompeo, if Twitter explodes in anger, Elon's right there to be like, hey, this is probably a no-go. Probably a no-go. And within hours, he tweets out, okay, fine, I won't do it. Johnny Grass says, hey, shit libs, this is how you push a candidate left. Exactly. The MAGA base pushed Trump further left in 5 hours than all these libs were going to push Hillary Clinton if she won, then all these libs pushed Joe Biden in 4 years. In a number of hours, they were able to call bullshit and say, hey, no. Pompeo, not going to fly. That's how you push a candidate left. Absolutely. Very good tweet. I tweeted this out at 3 o'clock. This was before Trump announced that Pompeo would not be welcome. The MAGA rank and file are already more outraged over a potential Pompeo appointment than the libs were about Biden's genocide. Look at how quickly they sprung into action at the first whiff of bullshit and actually moved him on it. Where are these libs all these years? Oh, yeah, no, we're going to hold his feet to the fire when he wins. Don't you worry. Got Cenk Uygur. No, if Kamala wins, we're going to hold her feet to the fire. Look at they actually did it. They actually did it very quickly. Aaron Mate, Trump going out of his way to announce that Pompeo and Haley won't be joining his administration suggests that he sees political benefit in leaving behind the neocons who dominated his first term. Hope this is a trend and not a one-off. Now, I do have to, for good measure, feature this because it's a good point by Caitlin Johnston. She tweeted this out tonight. You cannot be anti-neocon and also be Israel's BFF. That's not a thing. U.S. military support for Israel is absolutely central to the neoconservative ideology. Research the history of neocons and PNAC, that's Project for a New American Century, which said, hey, it would be convenient if a 9/11 style attack happened. They published that 3 years before it did happen. Total coincidence, obviously.
Fucking
Trump and his allies...
theorist.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Trump and his allies talk a big game about massively unpopular Bush-era neocons, but Trump has always been fully aligned with those same neocons on Israeli warmongering. He had actual PNAC members in his cabinet, like Elliot Abrams and John Bolton, for fuck's sake, and he has openly admitted to being bought and owned by the Adelsons. So the Trump faction is doing this weird cognitive dissonance straddle where they're more or less completely aligned with the neocons on Middle East policy and China policy as well, for the record, while posturing as big opponents of neoconservatives and warmongers. There is a faction of the MAGA movement which is anti-Israel, or at least anti-U.S. aid for Israel, but they're a much smaller and far less powerful contingent. It will be interesting to see how this plays out. So, yes, I think that caveat is hugely important, obviously. On the other hand, I think it is very telling that they blew the whistle on Donald Trump's bullshit within hours and actually got him to stand down, which is more than I could say for these worthless fucking lib Democrats who all through the summer of 2020, oh, don't worry, we're going to hold Biden's feet to the fire. He commits a genocide. They have nothing to say about it until Kamala Harris loses, and still they have nothing to say about it. Their main takeaway is you should have just sucked it up and voted for her. Anyway, so far, I got to say, I think what Caitlin Johnston says there is very important. But so far, that's what we need. We need more of that. I said, when Trump wins, it's going to be up to his base to hold him responsible for delivering on, an anti-war agenda of sorts. It's going to be up to them. They're the ones who have the power to do it. They have his ear. He cares what they think of him. And so far, at least they passed this test, which is good. I think they deserve some props for that.
Well, it fits. Think about the kind of person who would be attracted to a political party whose message is essentially what Hillary cackled back in 2016. America is already great. Right? It's if you're attracted to a party that is emphatically pro-establishment, that is emphatically invested in the narrative that, yeah, even when we do the wrong thing, we mean to do the right thing. It's a complicated world. You can't hold your leaders accountable. What do you mean? What do you mean? That's naysaying. You're siding with the enemies. You're siding with Republicans when you criticize them. It's a very difficult job. It's a complicated world. Joe Biden and now Kamala Harris is trying to balance the needs of the Palestinians with the need for Israeli security. If you're somebody for whom that all makes sense,
right?
Well, you're not going to pressure your leadership. These are this is why I always compare them to hall monitors. The people who are attracted to the Democratic Party are the kids in your class who were always very alert to how to make the teacher like them. That's a certain kind of person. They grow up to be those kinds of adults. The way that the Democratic Party signals sucks in all those deeply conformist people who are always very attuned. Now they pick it up through the media. The media is the teacher, and they pay very close attention to what they're supposed to signal in order to make the teacher like them. These are not people who are going to pressure the teacher. That's completely counter to their whole personality style. Now, whatever the reality is, Caitlin points out at the end there, of who Donald Trump actually is, the signaling of the MAGA incarnation of the Republican Party, of the post-Romney Republican Party, which was very much the same, just a different flavor of hall monitor kind of a party.
Right.
But if you're attracted to the MAGA version of the party, you're the kind of person who's going to say, hey, no Pompeo. You're somebody who believes that your role as a voter, as a citizen, is to upend the system, is to upend the establishment. And you assume you have that kind of right to pressure power, that your leaders are supposed to represent you, whereas the Democrats are made up of people who assume it's their job to serve their leadership.
Yes, absolutely. I should have had the good point, Charles, sound drop ready, because
you should have that ready. Yeah.
Good point, Charles. No, it is, but it's totally true. I mean, it's totally true, and that is a very, very apt insight. Somebody replied to me on, I think it was on Twitter. I got a reply to I think it was the tweet that I showed in this piece. He said, something to the effect of, well, that's because, we in the MAGA movement are generally suspicious of government, right? And so, we voted for Donald Trump. We don't love the state. We don't assume the state means us well. So even though we voted for Donald Trump, we're still going to be hyper suspicious of that. And look, this was the time where Donald Trump would try and slip one past the base, because the base is ecstatic. They're all, everybody's really, really on cloud nine in Trump world about having just won this landslide victory. Now is a time where you may figure, hey, they might look the other way on a lousy pick because, hey, we're just so happy we won. Fuck it, we're not going to raise this thing. But no, they did immediately. They said no Pompeo, and it's just bizarre to see that level of influence on him. And it came from online. Part of why I got the election, part of why I predicted a Kamala victory, part of what made me wrong is that, and this is a pleasant surprise to me, honestly, I didn't think this online world impacted reality in that way, in that massive a way, where you can actually influence politics through Twitter. It's a pleasant surprise that you can. That makes us feel like what we do is a lot more important than what we did a few weeks ago. Like now I actually feel like, wow, we always thought it was important to an extent as sort of a huddle, right? Hey, what are we thinking? How do we take what ideas we brainstorm here and put them into the world? No, actually, what the election results said is that we're putting them into the world right now. Like this whole thing, the online thing, actually matters. And to see basically a Twitter pile-on translate that directly in that short a period of time into never mind, Pompeo's not welcome. That's new. That's new. That would not have happened 8 years ago. That level of influence that the online space is now capable of exerting on the government, that's new. And I gotta say, as someone who does this for a living, it's exciting. It really is.
Yeah, and I will once again make the Reagan comparison. Now, Reagan, even though at that time he was the oldest person ever elected president, he was the first president to leave behind the tradition of rhetoric and to realize that he's better off grounding his speeches in the language of television and film because he came out of film. So he was the first. Before Reagan, presidents didn't make film references. They didn't come out and say, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Right.
Nobody did that. They were still doing we do these things because they are hard. They were still doing that.
Right.
Reagan was the first one who really, it was kind of revolutionary at the time to have a president reference pop culture in that way. Nobody had really done that before.
Right.
Same thing. Trump's coming out of reality television, and just like Reagan, he seems like a very unlikely figure to lead politics into the new technology in a way that people much younger than him had not done. But it's because, just like Reagan, his background's not really in that. It's in the entertainment industry. For Trump, it's in television.
Right.
And he mastered Twitter very early because it was kind of made for his temperament. Short attention span, quick bomb throwing kind of stuff. Nothing too long. He found the path forward. So yeah, what you're seeing, and a lot of ink's being spilled about that now. This is the whole podcasting thing come of age. Exactly what the legacy media has been fighting against for the last 4 years under the guise of fighting misinformation, or 8 years, I should say, and fighting disinformation. Really, they've been fighting to maintain their gatekeeping authority, and now that's completely blown apart.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. 100%. All right. Eric Rousseau says, what's the deal with... There you go. Yeah. What's the deal with missing 20 million votes in 2020 that weren't seen in 2024 or 2016 or 2012? Well, they mailed everybody ballots in 2020. And this is why I said it doesn't surprise me that it was a higher turnout. And what I don't understand in 2020 that it was now, that doesn't surprise me at all. The other thing I don't understand about the people who will say out of one side of their mouth, well, this proves that those 20 million votes were fake last time. And then they'll say, well, this election, they would have tried to rig it, but it was too big to rig this time. Think about that for 2 seconds. If they're capable of fabricating 20 million votes, then there's no such thing as too big to rig.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. Like, it's not, there's no logic to that.
Right. You got to let that go now.
You got to let that go. Yeah.
Take the win.
You got to let that go. Take the win. Yeah, exactly. Take the win. Take the win. You won. Not only did you win, but it's better that you won this time, because this time you won with the RFKs and the Tulsis, and now the Dave Smith and the Elon. Like, now you have this kind of amorphous coalition that could actually manifest in some populist policies. Whereas if you won last time, you would have gotten basically Trump first term a second time, which was dog shit. Let's be honest. It was a bullshit first term. Now Trump is actually talking. We're going to cover this on the Jimmy Dore show tomorrow. Now he's actually talking about Section 230 and free speech. That is the influence of the more populist sort of base that rallied around him this time, which there would have been none. So yeah, take the win. Take the win. Like if they could make up 20 million votes, then there's no such thing as too big to rig. That means they could have done it this time, and they didn't do it this time. So just like I said, take the win. Take the win. Beware of those damn lesbian witches. There you go. Thanks, Eric. So appreciate that very much. Hey, folks, we're going to tell you about Rumble Premium now before we move on with the show. This is a sponsorship from Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of the company. So when Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or opinions on issues like COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to such pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Zuckerberg said so himself in that letter that was in the news a few months ago. Rumble did not cave, however. They held the line on free speech, and they're attacked daily for giving shows like us a voice to talk to audiences like you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble will not survive with brand advertisers since they don't get much of it. So watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask for from you, pardon me. But if you really believe in the fight and if you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of the Rumble app. So join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. So go to rumble.com/premium and save $10 with promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium, which, like I said, is the ad-free version of the platform. If you don't have the means, we are just happy, of course, if you watch us on the platform. Alrighty, let's move on. We got, let's do some more super chats, and then we got Russ's big segment here. SB, thanks for the $5. Enough of having multiple communist left parties. They should all join up under ACP. They have the most recognized commie in the country, Jackson Hinkle. All right, well, what do we say? We want to have an open door policy, want to build. That's what it's all about at this point. And I think, what Kshama said about not running candidates right away is exactly right. Right now, put some wins on the board. Wins beget wins beget wins. Absolutely. What just happened there? There we go. In the year 2525. Oh, awesome. Yes. Good job hitting that. Posmo, thanks for the $10. Kshama, how do you claim to be pro-worker when you support importation of infinity foreign workers? I know you understand supply and demand. I know you understand welfare isn't a substitute for having a job. Yeah, I think she does understand that. Unfortunately, you missed her. Yeah, we didn't take Rumble Rant's super chats with her. And honestly, look, I don't know what her stance on immigration is. It's not something we've ever really talked about. So I don't know. I know that I personally think that the only sensible solution to that is to, nip it in the bud, which is stop giving people in Central and South America an impossible choice of I either live as a wage slave for American corporations in a cooed country where basically I'm forced to work for, dole for, $2 an hour for life, or flee the country north. Like, to me, look, I'll be honest with you. Not only do I not blame immigrants for coming here, I actually respect them for coming here. Especially as a man, your first responsibility as a man is to your family, not to any country, certainly not to any law. So if the United States overthrows the government in your country and creates a hellish place to live, I respect you if you make the trip north. I don't. Yeah, that's my.
That's why I always say, man, if you're like talking, these fucking immigrants, come on, man. Usually these are very like macho kind of guys who say that. You would do it. You would do it if you were in that position. You consider yourself a real man, right? So if people don't like to leave their homes. They're not coming here because they want to leave their home. They're coming here because our foreign policy has made their homes untenable.
Right.
So your focus needs to be on making their home tenable. And believe me, they're not going to want to come here.
Yep.
It's very few, very adventurous people who decide they want to go live in another country. Very few.
So
how many people do that from countries that are economically and politically stable? Decide they're going to go live the rest of their life in another country. How many people you see do that from Greece, from Italy, from France, from America for that matter? How many people do you see? And we don't have it very well relative to other Western countries, and very few people do that. If they're doing it in the millions, what does that tell you?
Right. So how about this? How about a UN-like body for the Western Hemisphere where we govern these kinds of things? Or how about this? This is a one-time expense. It would cost some money, but maybe it would solve the immigration problem so you guys wouldn't be so up in arms about this. How about reparations to these countries that we fucked over all these years? How about giving them the resources they need to rebuild so that their people could stay where they are and be happy where they are? How about that? That's something concrete. There you go.
Right.
Reparations for Honduras. Let's see Donald Trump pass that.
Yep.
Let's make it happen. Let's get
Top
cat
of his
turd.
agenda.
Hey, cat turd. Let's get that
Yeah.
trending. Number one, reparations for Honduras. Somehow I doubt that. Janice Anderson. Not all states allow ballot initiatives. People in states that don't allow them should pressure state legislators now, so it's an option.
Well, so then that's what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. DC, thanks for the $2. All socialist communist parties equals COINTELPRO. Thank you, DC. Hey, you're libertarians. What was his final count? What was Chase Oliver's final count? Posmo, Kshama, what's the materialist argument for infinity foreign workers driving down wages? Oh, Posmo, I hope you didn't waste too much money on that because we weren't going to take super chats with her. Can you separate your personal story from the needs of workers? All right, well, like I said, I will raise the immigration question to her. I'd be very curious to see what she thinks. Nice to see Kshama on again, says David Santucci. She's the real deal. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. All right, let's go to your piece, Russell, and then we got plenty more Rumble rants and super chats. We'll get to everything in due time. So go ahead. You're up.
Okay, so there is a lot of discussion about who made Donald Trump the president. If you're watching the liberal media, which is most of it, they're focused mostly on Latino men, uneducated white women, of course, the old bugaboo, white men. But, there's something that this guy, and this gal all have in common that no one is talking about. And really, it is the only demographic age group that voted in its majority for Donald Trump. That's right. My people. Gen X is the only demographic group that voted in a majority for Donald Trump. Now, at the time that this was put out, it was 53 to 45. Wound up being by 10 points. Now, if you look at every other age group, they did not. 18 to 29, Harris plus 11. Now, that did cut in from 2020, but it was still 30 to 44. Harris eked out a bare plus 1. 65 and older, tied, which is amazing. That's another thing I never would have seen coming. But no. Gen X, look, we're used to being ignored. We are used to being overlooked. Many say we are the middle child between the boomers and the millennials. But as the latchkey generation, as a generation of divorced households that basically had to raise ourselves, we got ignored and neglected for so long that we've grown to like it. All we wanted was to be left alone. All we wanted was to play with our toys, to play with our special vintage Star Wars telephone. But instead, you made us make a phone call. Hey, America, it's Gen X. Go fuck yourself. You had to make us do that. All we wanted to do was wear our vintage Dio shirt, read our old heavy metal magazines with articles so twisted, so depraved, so perverted, you'd get canceled today for even pitching what was in the old heavy metal magazine to heavy metal as it exists today. But no, you had to bother us. You had to harass us. Now, there were signs that this was coming, and this is what I meant earlier when I said I missed some of this. Gen X and President Biden, reality bites. I did not know this. Apparently, even ahead of time, they knew Gen X was the Trumpiest of the generations, and this I really didn't know. This is what I mean. If I had known this, I might not have expected women to vote on abortion. That my whole prediction was based on that. But only 41% of Gen X women said they supported Harris. 54% supported Trump. Wow. Okay, so make it make sense, right?
Oh, we forgot about the dry ass pussy vote.
The dry ass pussy. Yeah. It might have been some of that. I Okay, I am not going to say that, but I did say something in the chat earlier that some people will have caught. Imagine being so unlikable that you got the leave me alone, I don't care generation to come out en masse to vote your ass out. LOL. Yep. You're welcome. Now leave us alone. I voted. We had to. You kept bothering us and trying to tell us what to do. This was a mistake. Yes. You're welcome. Cleaning up boomers' messes is our lot in life. Amen, Mr. Sinistral. Amen. Yes. So now, a lot of you probably believe that Winona Ryder, as the Onion cheekily indicates here, was kind of the queen of Gen X, kind of the girl next door of every Gen Xer that everyone wanted to date. And that was true as far as it goes. But if you were a more interesting kind of a Gen Xer, if you were more into the kind of offbeat kind of girl who seems like she might punch you in the face after saying something profound and then steal all your furniture and maybe come back the next week, you might have been into the kind of poor man's Winona Ryder. Her name was Justine Bateman. You might know her as having played Mallory on Family Ties, the ditzy younger sister to Michael J. Fox. But she wound up being very interesting and kind of offbeat and kind of odd. She was somebody that, she was kind of the garage band version of Winona Ryder in a lot of ways. She was kind of the indie label, off-label actress of that period. Now, I got to say, the way that she turned out, I feel pretty justified in my personal. If you had asked me back then, who I would have taken out, Justine Bateman all day over Winona Ryder. She went on to be a big advocate for net neutrality. And she also, and this is very unusual for a Hollywood actress, she campaigns against cosmetic surgery, arguing for natural aging. So, I mean, she's probably dyeing that hair, but overall, good for her. So it does not surprise me that Justine Bateman has probably captured the general Gen X feeling about the last 10 years or so, particularly around cancel culture. And I think you'll hear a lot of echoes of things I've said over the years on the show and what she says here. And I've always said South Park is kind of the quintessential Gen X show. This is something, if they could talk about how they feel about the last few years, Trey Parker and Matt Stone might say something like this. Decompressing from walking on eggshells for the past 4 years. I have found the last 4 years to be an almost intolerable period, a very un-American period in that any questioning, any opinions, any likes or dislikes were held up to a very limited set list of permitted positions in order to assess acceptability. I've never in my life known that to be an American environment. It's an environment I have encountered in smaller groupings, a church, a private club, a clique, but never before as a national blanket. It has been suffocating. Common sense was discarded. Intellectual discussion was demonized. Only permitted position behavior and speech was allowed. Complete intolerance became almost a religion, and one's professional and social life was threatened almost constantly. Those that spoke otherwise were ruined as a warning to others. Their destruction was displayed in the town square of social media for all to see. This was the me too moment, where every effort was made to divert attention to oneself instead of recognizing how one contributes to the whole. This was the era of trying to exercise control over those who did not want to follow the crowd and have their own ideas about what they needed to do. This dampened our culture and innovation, bringing people to even think that generative AI, a regurgitation of the past, was actually our cultural future. When you starve a society of those called to be independent thinkers and cultural and intellectual innovators, you rob that society of any forward movement. Those that tried to impose that control maintained a kind of hall monitor position by threatening others with damning labels like sexist, racist, homophobic, etc., when the free thinking and questioning was nothing of the sort. However, the mob mentality that followed caused these social convictions when there was often no evidence to support them. See Charles Mackay's 1841 book, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. I am neither one extreme or the other, but am one of the millions of people who believe in common sense and that everyone should be free to live their lives however they want, unless that freedom interferes with someone else's freedom to live their own life. That's it. So we have the greatest generation, followed by the boomers, maybe the worst generation. I think we can safely say now that Gen X is the most based generation. And Justine?
Yeah. I mean, I think that last part is up for debate. Look, man, I think, Gen Z at the end of the day holding it down with these Free Palestine protests, right?
Sure.
But look, Gen X definitely has a finger in the air spirit, a middle finger in the air kind of spirit, and they definitely let that fly this time. Now, as in terms of like the generational breakdown,
don't be like the Greens, Gen X. Own it. Lean into it. Take credit for it.
Don't be
Damn
the Green
right
Party,
we elected
Gen X.
Donald Trump, motherfuckers.
Exactly.
You couldn't just leave us alone. This is all we wanted. We just wanted to play with our toys. You had to bother us.
Carrot Top over here at the prop comedy gonna have a gig coming soon. Yes, he was very excited about that. He rehearsed that prop comedy bit a lot before the show. I'm actually impressed you pulled it off without knocking the computer down or the microphone.
Well, that's
or anything.
it, because there's a lot going on over here.
A lot of moving parts here, folks.
Okay. Just so you know, so this thing, it actually, if you were to have a landline and you plug this in, it turns its head, does the respirator, and does the Imperial March. That's the ring.
There you go. I mean, in 2016, I guess these would have been Gen X at the time, right? It would have been, well, no, maybe not. I mean, in 2016, it would have been the Boomer Gen X borderline there. Is there a word for that? Is there a term for that? Like people who were born in like late 50s, early 60s. That's not quite Gen X, but it's a little old for Boomers. It's like that in between there.
Well, that's like the American Graffiti generation.
There you go. Okay, great. Okay, so
and I believe there is a name for them. I forget what it is.
Okay,
it's not the silent generation. Those are the ones right before the boomers.
No,
but there is like this like the American Graffiti group. Like they're not quite boomers, but they're not
right.
They're not silent generation.
Like the 50 to 60-year-olds were always kind of the core of the Trump base, the world weary worker with the windburn on his face, you know what I mean? Like that was always, especially in the Midwest, that is what always drove the numbers for Trump. And so it doesn't surprise, because now those are Gen X. Now we're 2024, right. So between 50 and 60 years old, that's Gen X. So it didn't surprise me that they sort of turned out for Trump. The other numbers are what's more surprising to me, that boomers, it was tied. That for what was it, 30 to 44, it was basically tied. Yeah. It was basically dead even. You would expect Democrats to do much better among 30 to 44 and much worse among boomers. So that was a big surprise. And the young vote. I mean, Democrats won the young vote by what, 11? That's very low. That's very low for a Democrat.
Of course. I mean, this is what I would say in all seriousness, because I looked at a lot of the articles about this. So from a personal perspective and from a research perspective, it makes sense because Gen X feels the most insecure. Surprisingly, that actually surprised me that Gen Z, I guess because they're young, they still feel like maybe I'll build up money. But apparently the Gen X feels most financially insecure.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are caught in the middle right now between taking care of elderly parents and they still have children at home. So they're kind of getting squeezed from both ends.
Right.
So there's that element. And also, I mean, this was kind of interesting. Look, I was the kind of kid who was more attracted to the, punk band posters with Reagan with a Hitler mustache on. but a lot of the Xers they talk to, maybe they're a little younger than I was. Maybe they were a little on the younger side of the cohort. They remember the Reagan years fondly as a time of like patriotism and good feeling in the country. Like they might not have been old enough to see what the dark side of that was at the time. They just remember, oh, look, Back to the Future was in the movie theater and it was morning in America. And some have very dark memories of the Carter years and the inflation. They were saying a lot of them are connecting it to when they were children. I mean, I remember that when they were children and there were gas lines.
The energy,
and there was this runaway inflation. But on the side that I really took it from somewhat humorously, but not entirely, and what Justine Bateman is addressing there, you could not pick a generation more likely to be deeply, deeply offended and infuriated by speech codes. We didn't like it when they called it political correctness the first time around when we were in our teens and 20s, and we don't like it now that you're calling it wokeness. It is a generation that was always known for having a very dark, irreverent, cynical sense of humor. And also you have to remember a lot of the Gen Xers, they're right in the prime of their careers. In other words, particularly vulnerable to cancellation. If you're retired, you don't really have to give a shit. Right?
Sure.
If your early career, well, maybe you could recover from a little social faux pas. They're right in
You can start a podcast.
You could start a podcast. That's what we did when we got canceled.
Yeah, right.
They're right in that point where maybe you get fired from the job that you've been working decades to have because you made a joke that for an Xer would have been fine, but now it's not fine all of a sudden. So just on that level, yeah, there's a lot of economic elements, but yeah, if there's a generation that the cultural thing would have been particularly potent for, it's definitely mine.
Yep. I think that makes sense. Got nothing to add because I am a millennial. So, but yeah, that was a good segment. I like that we did. And yeah, I mean, those age breakdowns, like I said, the X didn't surprise me as much as the others. The others, that's amazing. So much of this is amazing. That's what, like the 2016 thing, like that was the question going into this election was 2016 a fluke or was that the canary in the coal mine? And it turns out it was the latter. Because the realignment ended up being, if not a permanent thing, at least a lasting thing. We know that now for sure, to the point where, I mean, the fact that Democrats won the rich vote is amazing. I mean, that is just an astounding stat, so just so much to pour over, and we will continue to do so as the days and weeks carry on.
But it is very funny that once again, the Xers are being ignored. Like always.
Yep.
Like always. Nobody's talking about that angle.
Some things never change.
No.
Andrew L479, it's a solemn, somber mood, like a funeral at the Cornell West Campaign Command Center, but we haven't lost hope. We will fight on until every single ballot is counted. Well, thank you, Andrew. Del Cisco, this is not a drill. Thanks, Russ. Yes, Russ, repping the Roger Waters shirt tonight. Absolutely.
Yep.
Here we go. Noah Goop. Green Party's a dead end. Dems are a dead end. Republicans a dead end. Libertarians a dead end. Guess there's limited options here, but I don't see how we vote our way out of this BS. No, I don't see either, and that's why I think Kshama, has it right, which is you start with the movement building, and I think ballot measures and mutual aid are a good place to start in terms of just like getting results, getting the PR out there, putting some wins on the board. But ultimately, yeah, it is going to be about movement building. That's the name of the game. Green Party perpetually fails because they are perpetual cowards. I agree, Eric Cuso. Appreciate that. They're going to love us in Seattle. DC, thanks for the $2. Keep fighting for the 1%. Be 1% decide selections with the ballot box emoji. Sarah, thanks for the $15. There was no one better on tactics than V.I. Lenin, including his discussion about opportunists. Online left really should read him. I have no doubt that Kshama has. He's not that hard to understand. Thank you, Sarah. Primus, thanks for the $9.99. Keaton, can you tell this lady to go back to where she came from? No, that's very rude. Does she not know this is MAGA country? Typical liberal. This is MAGA country. You mean this channel is MAGA country? Or typical liberal immigrant wants to change our great nation to her liking? Yes, so do I. So do I, Primus. Thank you for the $9.99. SB, thanks for the $5. DSA has 200 elected officials. Greens have 21. ACP has 1 after 3 months. Merge as 1 could make us a big party instantly. Media couldn't ignore us. You think the DSA people are going to get along with the ACP people? That would be a funny room. That would be. I would love to see Haas and the DSA guys, have a joint event. That's
clapping.
That's quite the theory.
No
yeah, exactly. That'd be good comedy. But I don't know, man. DSA, they're fucking dog shit. Nexus Games, thanks to the $5. BS Stein teamed up with the Clinton camp. Well, that's in reference to the recount. Yeah, man, that smelled really bad to me. I gotta say, I did not like that. I did not like seeing that. Thanks. for the $5. Love seeing Kshama on the show. Another great guest who brings knowledge and wisdom is Jody Brar. Be good to see them on the same show one day. Thank you for that. Janice Anderson, thanks to the $9.99. PA only has paper ballots and auto recounts before certification equals result of lawsuit. Greens filed after irregularities found in recount after 2016. Rep sued to stop other recounts. Dems backed reps. Didn't the Democrats join the Jill Stein recount, though? I believe the Hillary Clinton campaign did join it. They didn't make a thing of it.
They did, right? Yeah,
they did join it, yeah. Green should be proud they fucked up DNC agenda, says I know myself. Thank you. Adel Syed, thanks to the $5. Conservatives in the U.S. talk about the nuclear family being the greatest value, but in Eastern world, it's the extended family that is valued more. Adil, thanks to the $5 again. Dems pronounce it as Kamala Harris. Republicans call her Kamala Harris. Kshama Sawant is the only one who gets it right. Thank you, Adil. DC, thanks for the $2. Nihilism was a revolutionary movement at one point. And David Santucci gives us another $10 for getting Kshama to swear. Thank you, David Santucci. Appreciate that.
She swears like a sailor, that one.
Yeah, with us, she talks a lot. And she's a Seinfeld fan.
Get a couple of whiskeys in her. Forget about it.
Hey, how good would a Keaton Weiss, Kshama Sawant Seinfeld podcast be?
Yeah.
That would be pretty good. If she's a fan, I should pitch that to her as a spin-off series. We dissect each episode.
I like it.
Yeah.
We're talking about expanding into some other stuff. So
yeah, that would be good.
That would be pretty good.
Jake, yes, please toss up the supporter scroll for us. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Folks, if you like what we do, you can help us do more of it by becoming a member at Patreon, Substack, or Locals. We're pushing the Locals hard now. Locals is a free speech platform associated with Rumble. When you join at dudissidents.locals.com, you get your name up in lights here on the supporter scroll. You also get call-in access to our weekly Q&As every Sunday night after the show. Hey, what's tonight? Sunday night. We will have our Q&A tonight after the conclusion of the program. You also get special supporter call-in streams. You get access to movie nights, special live events, and access to some, not all, but some of our pre-recorded interviews. We have an interview with a guest tomorrow at 1 p.m. We won't say who it is, but if you are a member, you will get live stream access to that interview tomorrow at 1 o'clock. That's sort of a backstage pass. So those are not shows. We don't do countdowns or music or anything. That's just we turn it on and you guys get a peek behind the curtain at our interviews. So we have an interview coming up tomorrow with a guest who is, we won't say who they are, but they are perhaps in a certain sense the most storied guest we've ever had. They're a recurring guest. We've had them on before. And the interview with this guest has probably been referenced more than any other interview in the show's history. I think that's correct. Is that not, Russ? And that's a pretty good hint.
Yes.
Yes. So that is what we got coming up at 1 p.m. tomorrow. So if you are a paid member at Locals, Patreon, or Substack, you'll get an email notification with the link to join that stream tomorrow at 1 p.m. We are also going to be live streaming for members on Saturday nights, Kevin Augustine's show, The People versus Nature, which he did an interview with us for. So that's
right. And Jimmy will be doing a call-in on that one. Yep.
Jimmy will be doing a call-in for that show. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not Saturday night. That's Sunday afternoon. It's a Sunday matinee.
It's Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock on the East Coast.
And so that will be at 2 o'clock. So that'll be a special stream for paid members. So you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com, or join our locals. That's what we're really pushing now. If you're watching on Rumble now, we got 2,300 of you over there. Hey, that's good for one of these, is it not? Where's our thing here? Over there. There you go. If you're watching over there on Rumble, hit that join button, bright red join button underneath the video screen. It takes you right to our locals page for $5 a month. You get all those perks. Oops, sorry. It is well worth it, we think. So please and thank you very much for your support. All right, we got one more piece of housekeeping before our last YouTube segment, and then we are switching to Rumble. But from the author who gave you the Renegade Nuns on Wheels MC comes the contemporary Shakespearean tragedy, Love and Potato Salad, Romance and Food Allergy in the Iowa City Park. The story of a kind, beautiful woman, the poor fool in love with her, and a food allergy so epic in scale, the officially prestigious UNESCO City of Literature will never be the same in this raunchy dissertation on the mix of horror and mediocrity that is life in modern-day North America and the absurdity of unrequited love. Love and Potato Salad by Jason Thomas Smith is available now in print and Kindle editions. Buy it now before it destroys you, and you can go to dudissidents.com/lovepotato to get your hands on this book. Jason has partnered with us. If you would like to partner with us, go to dudissidents.com/sponsors. If you have a passion project or a small business or an art piece or music that you would like to promote on the show, so far people who have done this with us have seen some good results. So thank you, everybody in the audience, for supporting our dissident patrons and sponsors. And you can get this book at dudissidents.com/lovepotato and help us build the dissident community. All righty. We got another segment here on YouTube. Then we'll wrap up our super chats. Then we will go over to Rumble for our Rumble rants and our final segment plus the Q&A. So plenty to do here tonight with you all.
We got to do the soccer hooligans over there.
Yes. Well, that's what I mean.
And on the intermission, Lib Meltdowns.
That's right. Lib Meltdowns on the intermission. So we have a fun transition for you. El Cazador, there needs to be a solid party constitution when people come together to fight the system, else he who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby become a monster. Thank you very much. Zabina Ali is a member for 7 months, says get money out of politics. Thank you very much. Mike, thanks for the $20. A couple Hard Lens media clips recently ended with a poetry reading from Jesse Jett. I thought very good and powerful messages. Maybe consider him on the Arts Festival. Well, Jesse opened our live show in New York City for us. We actually had Jesse come and play live, and we actually posted his concert to our channel. Jesse is fantastic. Thank you for that. Eric Torres, thanks for the $5. My girl's shit-lib sister lashed out at her drunk about Trump winning. She accused her of voting Trump. Oh, sorry to hear that, Eric Torres. Democrats only made accelerationism possible, but inevitable. Thanks, Eric Torres, again. Zabina Ali, thanks for the $10. Do I have to do a different subscription for Rumble and another subscription for Substack because I don't see your name on a membership list? We should add YouTube members to the member list too. We should do that. We don't have that set up. A good call. We should do that. So thank you for raising that concern. We will make that happen. Thank you for that. Brad Gilbert says polls are fake AF, just perception management. When you look at it, the polls were actually within the margin of error on all of them. It's just I thought they were going to be more wrong than they were. It's just the trend was wrong.
Side, yeah,
it was all one direction, but they were actually within the margin of error. Heather goes rogue. How dare you? Mad Men is epic, not a chick show. Not that there's anything wrong with it. All right.
I mean, I don't feel like it's a chick show.
Yeah, I mean, I never liked it. Brad Gilbert, abortion is a dead federal election issue. Well, I think the fact that abortion was up on a lot of the ballot measures actually helped people split their vote. Like, they voted for abortion rights and for Trump, mostly. Russ is saying that 3 pro-abortion amendments failed. The only one I know failed for sure is Nebraska. There could have been others.
Like 3 out of 10. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah. But most of them passed. I know Montana passed it. Like, a lot of red states passed abortion protections in the Constitution. And that, I think, freed a lot of people up to protect abortion in their state and then Trump federally. Nam DeGuerre says, please invite Noah, Carlos, or Haas of ACP on the show. Yeah, we would like to. We're talking about maybe Midwestern Marks, too. That would be a great idea. So thank you for that.
We just worked up, now that the election Michigas is over, We just worked up a list of people we want to invite on, and it is long.
Yes, absolutely. All right, folks, we got one more segment before the Rumble switch. So get ready for that, but we're not there quite yet. All righty, folks. This an update from Gaza. The UN publishes a horrific report, the horrific reality for people in Gaza and Israel since October 7th, detailed in UN human rights report. Close to 70% of those killed in Gaza are children and women. So here's a video setting this up.
Office is today publishing a report detailing the horrific reality that has unfolded for the people of Israel and Gaza since 7 October 2023. I have repeatedly warned about the risk of atrocity crimes being committed. Justice must be served for these grave violations of international law. The report raises concerns about the actions of the Israeli Defense Forces with respect to forcible transfer, attacks on hospitals in apparent systematic fashion, and journalists. It also points to the reported use of white phosphorus munition. States have an obligation to act to prevent atrocity crimes, and I urge them to support the work of accountability mechanisms, including the International Criminal Court, to exercise universal jurisdiction to investigate and try crimes under international law in national courts, and to comply with extradition requests.
Okay, so this report made some headlines here. A new UN report finds the majority of verified deaths of Israel's war in Gaza are women and children. The largest category of deaths are kids between the age of 5 and 9 killed in building collapses as the IDF targeted densely populated areas. Now, this report covers from October 2023 through April of this year. So it's not a complete report. They go in on verified findings of fatalities, which of course takes time. So this is months behind current data. But as you might imagine, given the events of the past 6 months, the current data is likely to be even worse. So the BBC picks this up. Nearly 70% of Gaza war dead are women and children, UN says. The UN Human Rights Office has condemned the high number of civilians killed in the war in Gaza, saying its analysis shows close to 70% of verified victims over a 6-month period were women and children. The agency said the high number was largely due to Israel's use of weapons with wide area effects in densely populated areas, although some deaths may have been the result of errant projectiles by Palestinian armed groups. The report said it found unprecedented levels of international law violations, raising concerns about war crimes and other possible atrocity crimes. The BBC contacted the IDF for comment in response to Friday's report. The UN agency said it verified the details of 8,119 people killed in Gaza from November 2023 to April 2024. Its analysis found around 44% of verified victims were children and 26% women. The ages most represented among the dead were 5 to 9-year-olds. About 80% of victims were killed in residential buildings or similar housing, the agency said. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said in a statement that this unprecedented level of killing and injury of civilians is a direct consequence of the failure to comply with fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. He cites the laws of distinction, which requires warring parties to distinguish between combatants and civilians, proportionality, which prohibit attacks where harm to civilians outweighs military advantage, and precautions in attacks. Turk called for a due reckoning with respect to the allegations of serious violations of international law. Jan Egeland, the head of aid organization Norwegian Refugee Council, told the BBC on Friday that he saw devastation, despair beyond belief on a recent visit to Gaza. There is hardly a building that is not damaged, and large areas looked like Stalingrad after World War II. You cannot fathom how intense this indiscriminate bombing has been on this trapped population, he said. It's evident that it is first and foremost children and women who are paying a price for this senseless war, he added. So here's one graph here. 88% of the verified fatalities were killed in incidents that killed 5 or more people, as you can see represented in that graph, which, of course, suggests a criminal, my opinion, and apparently their opinion as well, lack of concern for innocent civilian life. The OHCHR monitoring indicates that high number of fatalities per attack was due to the IDF's use of weapons with wide area effects in densely populated areas, although some of the fatalities may have been the result of errant projectiles from Palestinian armed groups dropping short. Entire families were vulnerable to strikes on residential buildings. 35% of the households in Gaza were already living as extended and multi-generational families in the same building prior to October 7th, with the average household consisting of 5.5 members. This trend would have inevitably, increased significantly following October 7th, with relatives sheltering together in crowded apartments, houses, and other buildings following their displacement from their former areas of residence. So this is really the graph that says it all. Fatalities verified killed in residential buildings in Gaza since October 7th. First of all, here you see not entirely equal, but a largely equal number of men and women killed, which right there tells you it's not combatants bearing the brunt of this. Second, look at the bottom 3 lines. The highest age demographic, age group of fatalities are children aged 5 to 9. The second highest, children aged 10 to 14. The third highest, children aged 0 to 4. Those are the highest 3 fatality groupings. Look at one of the lowest fatality groupings. Amongst, obviously, you have the very old, but of course, the lifespan is not long in Gaza to begin with, so there aren't as many very old people to begin with. But look at that. Military-age men, 20 to 24, 25 to 29, that's amongst the lowest, amongst groups 0 to 50. You have the deaths of children far outnumbering the deaths of military-age men, which means this is obviously not a war on Hamas. It's obviously a war on Gaza, specifically a war on women and children. This further shows that the main victims of strikes on residential buildings were children, with the 3 categories of age mostly represented in the verified fatalities sequentially being ones from 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 0 to 4 for both boys and girls. Furthermore, compared to previous escalations, such as in 2021 and 2014, the current ongoing escalation has killed women 26% of verified fatalities and men in roughly equal numbers. Since October 7th, the youngest victim verified was a 1-day-old boy, and the oldest victim, a 97-year-old woman. So the killing of civilians, females to males, this was in the 2021 escalation. And look, to be sure, we're not trying to whitewash or much less justify the 2021 escalation. But look at the large disparity between men and women there versus now. Okay? Look at the 2014 escalation, where you had military-age men from 20 to 24 representing by far the highest fatality count. What that proves to you is that even a state as ghoulish as Israel is capable, if they want to, of exercising far more discretion than they are now. Because look at these last 2 periods, these flare-ups in violence, as opposed to this one. What do you see here? This one, women and children bearing much more of the brunt than the previous 2. Why? Because this one is the one that Netanyahu promised would be unprecedented. He promised an unprecedented response. Unprecedented means we're not going to give a shit who you are this time. We're going to clear the place out. This is what we told you would happen. It was the most obvious thing in the world. Compared with the distributions of OHCHR verified fatalities in previous escalations, the strikes on residential buildings suggest a pattern of attacks inflicting casualties evenly as a proportion across the entire population, with high numbers of babies and young children, women, older persons, and families killed together in residential buildings, raising further concerns that the IDF has failed to strictly comply with fundamental principles of IHL, that's international humanitarian law. The continuation of these attacks, killing very evenly across the population for months, despite early evidence of the massive civilian harm suffered as a result, demonstrates an apparent indifference to the death of civilians and the impact of the means and methods of warfare selected. Where verified deaths mirror the demographic makeup of a population at large, rather than reflecting the known demographic of combatants, i.e. military-age men, which I talked about, this raises concerns regarding compliance with the principle of distinction and reflect an apparent failure to take all feasible precautions to avoid and, in any event, to minimize incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, and damage to civilian objects. The deaths may also reflect a pattern of attacks conducted with disregard for the demonstrated and known extensive incidental loss of civilian life, raising concerns that individual strikes continued to be ordered even where there was knowledge that civilian harm was likely excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage, i.e. that late October bombing of the refugee camp where they said they got one high-ranking Hamas member and killed hundreds in the process. So that is just the latest devastating report about this. In a sense, that is a smoking gun. I mean, there have been so many, it's almost frivolous to say it at this point. But when you look at the distribution of fatalities across multiple age and gender demographics, that's genocide. That's a smoking gun right there. That this reflects, even relative to Israel's prior bombardments, where you had military-age men bearing the brunt of it in both 2021 and in 2014. This time, what do you see? Women and children bearing the brunt of it. An even distribution of fatalities across the board, which, of course, indicates, I would argue, proves indifference to innocent civilian life. So just a devastating report by the UN. And, you know, I hate to keep bringing up the election, but this is where we talked about with Kshama. These people want to lecture you about how racist the country is. Almost every pundit who wants to browbeat you for being a racist supports this. There's nothing more racist than this. There's nothing more racist than the state of Israel.
Of course. No, it infuriates me. It infuriates me when I see these libs talking about how you voted against me. You voted against my rights. You voted against my interests.
Look at this. Show them this graph.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. And all of the people who say that, they never said a fucking word about this. They never said, they're not saying a word about it now. They didn't say a word about it before. Here and there, some of them are so tone deaf that when they were making the case for Harris, they said, do it for guns. Dude, these people are fucking disgusting pigs. But that having been said, hey, this is why Trump's support of this was a deal breaker. This is why I know some people thought, you know, we have a viewpoint diverse audience. We're very happy to have that. But part of the reason we're happy to have that is we hope to persuade people who don't agree with us. It's not because we're on the fence. We're not on the fence about what Trump represents. In the end, genocide is a deal breaker. Doesn't matter who it is. If it's not a deal breaker for you, you need to check your moral compass, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Somebody who was a Harris person said, so did you vote for Trump? I said, do you hear what I'm saying?
Right.
Do you hear what I'm saying about why there was absolutely no way I would support Kamala? So why would I support Donald Trump? And in spite of what a lot of people would lead you to believe, that's how Jimmy felt too. That's why Jimmy, if it never went out and endorse Trump. And when he was asked, he refused because of that. That is a fucking deal breaker. You want to say he's going to do this and that economically? I don't think so, but it's beside the point. It's beside the point. Even if I did, I could not support Donald Trump, because at that point, how are you different from these libs that we're talking about who were able to ignore that because they thought it was in their interest? You're just like them at that point. So what are you doing criticizing them? What are you doing pointing and laughing? You're the same way. You just thought your interests lay here instead of there, but you're also ignoring a genocide. Now, part of the reason that this is ripping the country apart the way it is, I believe, is because after Vietnam, they learned their lesson because they allowed the reporters very free reign. So it was on TV every night. Every night, people saw people being fucking incinerated under napalm, and it was driving the country insane. After that, they learned their lesson. They embedded these reporters with units. You didn't just roam around a war zone like that, doing your own thing. So by the time you get to the Iraq War, it looks like a game of Missile Command. Nobody's Fahrenheit 911, man. It was shocking when people saw that footage in that film because nobody'd seen it. It wasn't on the news. Iraqi children mutilated. We didn't see that. We saw the green screen explosions in the distance. That was it. Because of social media, this is the first time since Vietnam that people are seeing it. It's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to see a chart. It's another thing to see a screaming, burned child. That is ripping the country apart as it did in the Vietnam era. Now, the MAGA base, they managed to pressure Trump with Pompeo. Well, listen, we were talking about this the other day. Well, now you need to pressure them about this. Flex your muscles about this. It's been very clear to me every time I've been at a MAGA event. You guys aren't into this, as far as I could tell.
Right.
I haven't talked to one MAGA person, unless they're basically a Zionist, who attach themselves to MAGA because of Trump's support for Israel. I haven't seen an organic person who started out as a MAGA person who supports that shit. Not one. So pressure them.
Yeah.
Pressure them.
Keep going.
You have power over that administration that the left never had over Biden.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And keep going. Get him to stop this if you think you can. If you think you can. A lot of the picks, look, part of the problem here is, he takes a stand against Pompeo and Haley, which is a great place to start, and props for that. The problem is in Washington, you go down the line, you see a lot of smaller versions of these people. It's not easy, but it has to be done, and you're the only ones who can do it. Yeah. Well, I think they're looking at Massey for agriculture. But you gotta do it, because this, not that you need to have my experience. I got 2 boys who are 5, 1 boy who's age 0. It's crushing. It's absolutely crushing. And it's obviously a non-starter in terms of any candidate. It's a no-brainer. So now, and honestly, like this, we were talking about it off air before we went on. As much as, we've developed a thirst for lib tears, this kind of ruined it for me. Like, yeah, it's fun watching them melt down. It's not as fun as it was in 2016. This just ruins it. It does. Right. It's too dark. It's
how much
too
joy can
crushing.
you take in
How
it
much
when
joy
there's
can
a
you take in it?
genocide behind it? Yeah.
Exactly. Like this just kind of killed it for me. So yeah, you got to go to work. It's in the hands of the MAGA base now. You're the only ones who can stop it. You're off to a good start with the Pompeo thing. Keep going. That's all I got to say. Keep going. All right. We're going to take some super chats, then we're going to head over to Rumble for our final segments, Rumble rants, and we're going to take your calls. Please do not call in quite yet. Please wait until we have made the Rumble switch. Thank you very much. Let's put our link up here on the screen here. DoDissidents.com/Rumble is where you're going to go in just a few minutes. You can start heading over there now if you want. That link right there, DoDissidents.com/Rumble, takes you right to the current live stream. We will meet you over there soon. Let's take these super chats first. Sparky, thanks for the $10. Trump rightfully dismissed the idea of Pompeo and Haley being in his administration, but he needs to get rid of Brian Hook so he doesn't populate the State Department with Pompeo and Haley clones. Well, that's what we were just saying. There's a lot of clones there. Washington's full of people like that. A. Hamilton, movie night suggestion, Roadhouse, starring Patrick Swayze, a philosophical odyssey for our times. There you go. Posmo.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah. I think the miss on the election was abortion was mostly decided in 2022. Tons of abortion ballot initiatives, just a few this time. That's fair enough. No Brian Hook, says Sparky. Sarah, his nickname during the Trump administration, I remember correctly, was Pompeo Maximus. Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Joe Sabata, thanks for the $9.99. This was also a big FU to Davos and the colonial banking system. Incumbents across the world being rejected. The hell with these globalist warmongering scumbags. Well, there is a pattern. Apparently, a lot of people all throughout the world, not just in this country, but people who held power during the transition out of the pandemic are having a tough time holding on to power because of the damage done to the economy in that period. That became apparent in that period. It was done during the pandemic, but the shock of that became very known during those 2 years. And yeah, all around the world, people who were holding the ball at that point are having a tough time holding on to power. Eric Maines, LMAO, watched Marr to see him grovel Friday. He told losing Dems to look in the mirror. My favorite Zionist who can't go 10 minutes without cheering genocide. Not a peep about war the whole show. Guest got message too. Nothing to see here, folks. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that very much. Posmo, Rumble needs closed caption. My parents can't watch. Well, the closed cap. Oh, can they not watch
closed caption on Rumble?
On the replays, they're not? That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Come on, you know they're coming here for the free trans surgery. There you go. Yes, my favorite Kamala policy. That's my favorite policy. Gareth Richmond, where my heistas at Envor Hoxa or bust. I'm sorry, I don't get that reference. Thank you, though. Maybe that's just my stupidity. Russ saw Maiden yesterday. One word, awesome. They're on tour. There you go.
That
from Vroom Rutabaga.
You know what? They are of a very few bands that sound that good who are playing in that style who are that old. Because usually that singing style just shreds the voice.
Right.
But he sounds fucking great. Dickinson sounds great.
Awesome.
I don't know how he's doing it, man. Maybe they really did worship the devil.
There you go. Left LP in 2020, Libertarian Party, says DC voting equals consent ritual for tyranny. LTS, thanks for the $5. Justine Bateman is my spirit animal. There you go.
Yeah.
Mark Pugliese, thanks for the $10. I taught in a history department that was a Gen Xer ghetto. One of them said, when I was little, my dad liked Reagan, so I liked him too. Since then, I always thought Xers were D-bags. Well, not all of them. Present company accepted.
See that's what I'm saying. I was surprised to read that some of the Xers see Reagan that way, but hey, man, I'm kind of on the higher end of X.
Right.
So some of them probably were. I was 10 when Reagan got elected, and I was 18 at the end of his second term. So I really came of age with Reagan. But if you were like 5, you're going to remember it like, oh, yeah, Reagan, right? So I think that's the difference.
Sparky says they called them tweeners. Is that what they called them? Sparky, I couldn't help but notice that in his nostalgia, Russell failed to mention his bedroom poster of Tipper Gore. Thank you, Sparky. Gareth Richmond, dear God, is the Gen X wank and cry fest over yet? Yes. Kinky, thanks for the $2. Would pay money to see Jody Brar on DD. There you go. There seems to be a lot of love for that pick. Charles Gracia, thanks for the $5. Gen Xer here. I'm glad that my generation is still getting ignored because I don't like to be bothered. There you go.
Exactly. That's the whole joke, man. They bothered us so much that we showed up to vote.
Yeah. Mark DeChara, Blue Dissidents is fake news. Cheatin' Weiss and Russ Slobular picked Kamala over me. That's right. We did pick her over you. Were you running?
We did.
Yes.
We did. Is that Dr. Shiva?
Is that Dr. Shiva? Is that Dr. Shiva? That's Dr. Shiva's burner. Tusker, member for 18 months. Hey, Tusker says, I agree it'll be awesome to see Jody Brar as a guest. There you go. A lot of love for Jody Brar. All right. Eric Maines, thanks for the $10. I thought racial identity politics was brutal. Damn, I'm afraid to admit my age or generation now. Pitchforks, tar, and feathers almost jumping from the chat. hiring BlackRock bodyguards before next show. Thank you, Eric. Janice Anderson, Dems didn't back the recounts. The judges in both states asked the Dems if they agree with recounts. They refused, so the recounts were terminated. But they did count. They did count votes, right? I mean, they did do recounts, and it turned out I think Trump gained a few votes from the recounts. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $10. Keaton Garrett Cole is opting out and will become a free agent going into 2025. Is that right? Wow. Case Study QB. Hey, Case Study. Hey, thanks for watching.
Hey, what's up?
Great interview. Much love, fellas. Much love to you, Case Study
Thank
QB.
you, man. You're doing great work.
Good.
Man.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes. 100%. Donald, grab him by the pussy Trump. Thanks for the $2. Have Jackson Hinkle on your show for an interview. We got a list. We got a list. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $20. I hope Trump doesn't take that scumbag Mike Pompeo in his cabinet. He said he's not. He crushed it.
Not happening.
Janice Anderson, Harris supporters are calling for Gaza to be turned into a parking lot. Proves they haven't been paying attention at all. It already has been. Yeah, you get these idiots who are lashing out saying, I don't care what happens to Gaza now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Wyatt Reed posted a bunch of tweets like that. And then you have some of them say, well, I can't wait until Latino families get deported.
Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Sparky, fun fact, both Ukraine and Israel have taxpayer-funded healthcare. American taxpayers, that's right. Ron McKinnon, thanks for the $10. It's kind of funny how Biden said his legacy would be restoring dignity to the White House and is now going to be succeeded by the guy under whom that dignity was allegedly lost. Of course. Well, it's a total repudiation. It's just a total own. No other way to look at that. All right, folks, we are heading over to Rumble right now, dudissidents.com/Rumble. We have a great crowd over there already, 2,800 over there. That's good.
Yeah, 25.
So, folks, you're not going to leave before our Amsterdam soccer segment, are you? No, you can't do that. You got to come over to Rumble, dudissidents.com/Rumble. Q&A.
And we got lib meltdowns on the intermission.
That's right. You can't miss out on that. dudissidents.com/Rumble. That takes you over there. There will be a 5-minute intermission, and then we will continue the show, and we're going to go right into the Q&A after the segment. So there will be no second break. This will be the only break. It's a 5-minute intermission, which starts right about now. Thank you all very much for being here. We hope you all join us for the final segment of the program over at dudissidents.com/Rumble. We are hosting the Jimmy Dore Show this week, so if you're not sticking around, we'll see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. But please come on over. It is going to be a lot of fun.
And breaking news, we have Lee Fong.
Oh, we do have Lee Fong for tomorrow. Beautiful.
He just DM'd us.
Perfect. Nice. All right. So we got Lee Fong interview tomorrow on the Jimmy Dore Show. We're
and,
gonna take
and Wednesday on the Jimmy Dore Show, we've got Gary from Nerdrotic.
Oh, there you go. We got that. All right. So we got a nice week lined up here. That's
yeah.
amazing.
Didn't I tell you we got?
No,
him?
you didn't tell me he was confirmed. You told me he was confirmed to come on. You didn't tell me the date yet.
Yeah. Wednesday.
All righty. Well, that's great. Well, hey, folks, thank you very much for being here tonight. We will see you in 5 minutes. dudissidents.com/Rumble. Until then, thanks for the show so far. We'll see you soon. The show continues in 5 minutes. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.
Thank you.